OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, it's 7:30. We'd love to hear from the Manchester United fans who agonisingly were beaten last night in one of the most interesting and best and tense penalty shootouts that anybody can remember. If you've got memories of penalty shootouts, you'd like to share with us this morning, 0879 180 180. But if you're a Man United fan, was this a referendum on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's management, or is this a goblet of minor prestige and therefore not important? Eoin?
The latter. It is definitely the latter. You can have an opinion on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's abilities as a football manager, but you'd want to have based that opinion on at least some of the 60 games that they've played this season that didn't involve last night's game. Like, was last night the most important competition that Manchester United played in this season? Absolutely not. It was the third most important competition they played in this season.
Was it the biggest game of the season?
Maybe in isolation, but to distill something down into one game is to miss the entire point of where this Manchester United season has gone. The title race that they fell away from, the Champions League group that they crashed out from. Those were the two important moments of the season.
It's true. However, doesn't last night... So are you honestly going to tell me that what your view of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was pre-game is not exacerbated and explained and writ large in the biggest game of the season? So it's the thing about it, it doesn't come in isolation. It comes at the end of a season, and it is, I would argue, the perfect example of everything that there is in this Manchester United and this Ole Gunnar Solskjaer team and philosophy and mode of being. And so, rather than not being important, it actually is the absolute perfect example.
Yeah. So those things that you say might have popped up during the season, though, or popped up last night. These failings either on the sideline or in the Manchester United squad. If you haven't seen those things pop up at various points during the season, then you have not been watching Manchester United. Like, they did fall away in the Premier League. They did crash out of the Champions League. Those are two things that happened. To think that everything was rosy in the garden until last night is to miss the point of this Manchester United season entirely. The whole point of this Manchester United season, from what I could tell anyway, was that this was going to be a team that would move towards a Premier League title challenge next season. That was how we were speaking about this. Whereas all of a sudden, the Europa League became the Champions League. Winning that trophy last night became all important. We were talking about Matt Busby's birthday. We were talking about the anniversary of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's goal in the Champions League final. This was the level that the Europa League final had been elevated to. The Europa League does not matter. It does not matter, but all of a sudden this became like the biggest fixture for Manchester United in years last night. When in actual fact, the more important thing that happened for Manchester United this year was that maybe they came close to Manchester City at times. Like, nobody's going to care about this trophy next season if they're challenging for the Premier League. Now, the thing is, if you read into last night and say there are certain elements of that team that aren't able to challenge for a Premier League next season, then that's where the issues begin, in my opinion. But the fact that Villarreal are Europa League champions, I mean, it's a bad sign of Manchester United if they desperately care about not winning the Europa League, well, in my view.
But that's where we are. Like, that. This isn't Manchester United of Alex Ferguson. Even on the show yesterday, we heard that Gary Neville said the League Cup in 2006 was important for them, and then they challenged for the title the next year. Daniel Harris made the point. Like, that Manchester United team had within it a bunch of players who already had a load of medals. This team doesn't. And so therefore, if you believe in the Solskjaer project, if you think that he is the person to bring you, if he is to Manchester United what Jurgen Klopp is to Liverpool and what Pep Guardiola is, maybe Roberto Mancini is, to Manchester City, then you need evidence along the way to show that despite the failings of the whole season, in big games, on big nights, you can pick a team, you can manifest destiny by fixing the problems and overcoming the issues. But what happened last night was all of those issues that you talk about were exacerbated. All of the tactical stasis, the getting in his own head, the squad not having any depth, him not trusting in those players, him not making any changes for as long as he did, him not subbing off the goalkeeper who's never saved a penalty. Like, all of that stuff gets magnified and exacerbated. And in a club like Manchester United, where they haven't had the glory of, or any of the recent glories like the FA Cup win or the Europa League win have been completely false dawns because they had the wrong managers, then what happens is last night becomes really important. And the club imbued it with importance because that's what Manchester United do. They trade off their history They make money off their history. They commodify their history the way they always have done. And it's always been a huge part of what made them so important to people who are not from Manchester. And it has made them this very rich corporation. And you need success. You need success to keep that going. And they didn't get the success last night because, as you say, all those failings were there. But Solskjaer couldn't overcome them. Now, is that terminal? I think we're asking that question not after last night, but we're asking it after that whole season.
Well, that's the way it should be. It should be the whole season. But you're starting to sound like you're describing Liverpool circa 2011, 2012, that they commodify history. That is not a good place for Manchester United to be in. This should not have been the be-all and end-all, but it does seem that there is like a doomsday scenario that exists now where, you know, the season is a bad season. Like Solskjaer asked after the game, says, no, it's not a successful season, of course. He talks about the fine margins in football. One kick can make a season or diminish it. I disagree with that. I think that the 60 games that we saw before last night will be the mark of how successful this Manchester United season is, because as soon as they crashed out of the Champions League and as soon as they distanced themselves, or Manchester City distanced themselves from Manchester United, that for me was the silverware version of Manchester United season down the drain. They are the two competitions that Manchester United fans should trade off.
Sure.
Forget about the history.
Sure, but you can't write off the last 3 months of the season then. Like if you're a club and if you win this trophy, then you're pointing to, we finished second and we won a trophy and we had the big game mentality to come through on big occasions. And also the way they won their semi-final, there was spectacular performances, there was loads of goals, there was vibrancy of football. If they performed really well last night on a big European stage with fans in the stadium, then you would have been able to say this was something. It wasn't nothing. I think what you're saying is that last night was nothing, it doesn't actually matter. And they, like...
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it doesn't matter as much as some people will tell you, because if we're looking for real evidence to where Manchester United are going, we've had way more opportunities to see that during the season than just last night. I'm not denying that it wasn't important. Of course it was important. It would be like...
But the problem is that everything that we saw over the course of the season, you can read it both ways. You could read it in a positive way and say, here's the team that he inherited that was really not great, that had like been completely shot of confidence, and he has overseen the team go through terrible runs, but actually he's built them into something and they're ready to move, they're ready to go. But it looks like, on the evidence of last night, and it's a small sample size, that they're not ready to move and they're not ready to go, that he hasn't found a way to put all his best players in the team at the same time. The conundrum that we were talking about yesterday on the show with Daniel Harris was like, how do you fit Greenwood and Rashford and Bruno and Pogba in the same team? What do you think the evidence is now? Did we not learn something about that last night?
Well, for sure. And I mean, that's what you take away from last night, more so than the fact that they're not Europa League champions, I think, is that you actually can't maybe play them in the one team. Like I thought Scott McTominay, for example, was excellent last night, maybe Manchester United's best player. And it just kind of seems weird that they probably need to sign a better version of him, either to play alongside him or maybe to replace him beside
I think you're right.
Pogba, because like it's hard to know exactly what they do in that position. But of course there were massive learnings, a terrible word to take away from last night. But this is also a European final against a team with an excellent manager. Like Unai Emery is an excellent manager. And he had a bad time at England, but that doesn't change the fact that he's an excellent manager. And I know if you were... I wasn't watching it on BT Sport last night, I was watching it on Virgin, but by all accounts, BT Sport were completely dismissive of what Villarreal are. Manchester United are better than Villarreal, don't get me wrong, but Villarreal had to beat a few good teams to get to this final. They have to be a good team to be in a Europa League final. So a strange thing can happen against a team like Villarreal in a one-off game like this. Manchester United should have the game killed over 90 minutes. There's only so much in your team selection you can do with that. I think that Solskjaer picked a team that had enough of his attacking talent on the pitch, and he kind of went for it. He was missing Harry Maguire. Like, so are you putting the blame at Solskjaer's door for last night?
Yeah, look, at this stage, right, the managers live and die by how they perform in big games. And in many big games this season, Solskjaer has done well. But it turns out there's been loads of opportunities for them over the course of the season to push on in matches, and they settle for draws. When I actually think that a trophy last night for Solskjaer would have been hugely important, because it franks the work that they've done. And I think this missing the Europa League final, because it's just the Europa League, actually misses the point. You're right. It's not the tournament they should have been in at the start of the year. It's not the tournament that they start out going, well, we're going to win the Europa League if we get knocked out of the Champions League. But they're supposed to. You're supposed to. You are the super club. You were the team who was in the European Super League, not Villarreal. You are supposed to beat the city of 50,000 people in the final, and that's a sign that you're doing your job properly.
Let me just clarify that. Sorry. The point is about the trophy. So if
the trophy matters, though. All of a sudden, when you get knocked out, you recalibrate, and the trophy matters. Joe Schmidt won the European Challenge Cup in the year that they got knocked out of the European Cup, and they did not celebrate that like it was a European Cup, but it was still something for them at the end of the year to do their lap of honour, to have that night where they all were, and some players really benefited from it. No one looks back and goes, geez, you won that trophy. But what it did do was it kept everything ticking over, kept everybody going, yeah, this is going in the right direction. That was a bit of a blip. Not going to happen again. We've learned from it. We came back from it. We won other big games in Europe against good teams. And at the end of that, we put out a team that I managed, that over the course of this season, I've learned what my best 11 is for those big occasions, which was completely not what happened last night. He pulled a pep on it and got in his own head. He was obviously talking too much to Ferguson on the way over on the plane going, I'm going to play Fred and McTominay because that's what I always do in these big... Nah, you can't do that. You got to go for it, Ole. Come on.
But Fred and McTominay, not playing Fred isn't the reason why Manchester United are not Europa League champions.
Well, I don't know. You don't know.
That's complete irrelevant point to make.
It's sorry. Well, then don't get sidetracked, right? But that's the duo that he played in all his big games.
Yeah.
In all the big games.
Because they hold well defensively. Like, did they go 1-0 down if Fred's on the pitch? I mean,
maybe not. I mean, they don't trust the two centre-backs.
I think they got a better chance of scoring with Paul Pogba on the pitch rather than Fred on the pitch.
Did it work? Did it work?
They got a better... I think that...
Did it work?
I would be confident that if he played Fred and McTominay,
you can't be
we would be having
now.
the exact same conversation this morning. Just one last point.
I actually don't think we would. I don't think we would. I think they would have won the game. But anyway...
So Fred's the key. He plays Fred next season. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is like the best manager in the world.
Last night in the game. You're getting sidetracked by this. The point is that the trophy mattered last night, and to say it doesn't, and to say that not winning that game is irrelevant, I actually think what it means is that Solskjaer goes from being somebody who had all of next season to suddenly somebody who's on a hot seat if the season doesn't start well. I think that's the importance of it. And I'm not saying that I think that's right or wrong, but that's what's going to happen with the Manchester United fans. Because doubt creeps in. And at Old Trafford, when the fans return in September, October, if the form is bad, they don't have the trophy to fall back on. He can't point to, oh, look, we finished second last season. Like, yeah, well, so what? Jose Mourinho finished second. I think that's why this matters, though.
So, but also, Jose Mourinho won the Europa League. It could be thrown right back at you.
They got rid of him.
You can work this both ways. My point is not that the trophy doesn't matter at all. Of course, these things matter. What matters more than that is if you believe that Solskjaer showed a new sort of failing last night that is detrimental to the season next year. And if you think that, then fair enough. My point is that you should have been able to spot those failings during the season. I'm not here saying that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to be Manchester United manager this time next year. I'm not even saying he is an outstanding manager. I'm saying he's a good manager. They might actually be able to go out and get a better manager next season. I think Solskjaer's done a good job, not a great job. And my point is that people are completely overreacting to one incident last night. Well, okay, so it was an incident that lasted for 90 minutes plus 30 minutes plus.
End of the season.
It was a big body of work, but there was also other opportunities to gather that evidence before last night. If you're only waking up to certain failings,
but no one's only waking up to it.
Squad last night, then I think you've been lying under a rock for a lot of the season.
But all of the things that we have assumed, the outcome of sport is not determined, and so therefore, what we think about things is actually up for grabs. A big game last night is new evidence. And either you fall back on the biases that you've built up over the course of the season, or there's an opportunity for the team and the manager to blast through those and go, no, what you know is not true. We're taking a giant leap forward here. We are a swashbuckling, buccaneering team who are able to go out there against a wily European campaigner like Unai Emery and how he sets up his team and slash them because we're Man United. But they didn't do it. And I think that is new evidence.
And that's why they're in the Europa League. The reason why they're in the Europa League is because of those failures. That is why they're in this competition. And the reason why they're in this competition is evidence that we've seen already this season. Okay. That's just the basis of my point, is that there were new things last night, but it's not the entire thesis on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And it just seems to be like...
But the trophy would have given him... Do you not agree that the trophy would have given him an extra coat, an extra little veneer next season?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
When the
I
blip
would go...
comes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And like, in the famous words of Henry Winter, the clock is ticking, baby. probably not from the owner's perspective, or as I made the point yesterday, the new CEO's perspective. But at the same time, you know, if things don't start great, all of a sudden, the new CEO might find it easier to get rid of the club legend who didn't win the trophy last year when he had the opportunity and did the things and made the problems that have been there all season seem like they were actually problems, as opposed to, oh, this is just the learning curve for people.
You're right, but my point is that I think that the reason why they might arrive at that decision is as much to do with the fact that they didn't challenge for the season's Premier League properly and that they didn't make it to the knockout stages of the Champions League. So that's just my point. That this is just another layer on the season rather than being the referendum on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer last night. That's my opinion on it.
Okay.
Just one quick thing before we get to Phil. It's really interesting. You look at Solskjaer's pre-match comments talking about the fact that his wife's birthday is on the 26th. We've got married on the 26th, so I have to believe in destiny. Daniel's story on Twitter pointed out that he referred to the omens of number 26 and then left his number 26, Dean Henderson, on the bench for the penalty shootout, which is just remarkable.
Wow. What would have happened if he'd stuck Dean Henderson on? I mean, that we don't know. 7:46 this morning. Let me tell you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We have Europa League Final chat with Phil. Sports pages at 7:55. Omobamidele, Ireland's latest superstar, a potential successor to Rio Ferdinand in Premier League terms, and probably getting straight into the Ireland team as well. He's been talking with Eoin, GAA, with Tommy at 8:20. We're going to be reflecting the deluge of comments coming in about Manchester United the whole way through. Our Euros cheat sheet is finishing off Group C, I think. Andy Mitten at 8:40, Rihanna Jarrett at 9:05, and TV picks at 9:20 this morning. Now, Phil Egan, good morning to you. How are you?
How are you doing, lads?
My case is here that last night was actually important because what it does is, well, first off, it's an opportunity for Solskjaer to prove that in those one big off matches, he is at an elite European level and he can do something to interrupt the pattern. And the second thing is that it gives him a bit of breathing space when it comes to whenever the blip happens next season. Am I right or wrong?
Well, no, I would agree with you. I can see the merits in both arguments where, okay, you can argue United shouldn't be in the Europa League final because the only reason they're in it was because they came third in their Champions League group, a group that they were in control of, and they butchered it, where they lost to Leipzig in their last game. They just needed a point from their last two games. They go into the Europa League. Now it's a chance to win a trophy. And I think it was hugely important for Solskjaer because he hasn't won a trophy. United haven't won one in 4 years. And it just gives you a bit of confidence going into next season. Sure, in the Premier League, they finished second this season. They obviously were third last season. So he's had 2 full seasons in the Premier League, Solskjaer, as a manager, and he's finished in the top 4. But now, conversation last season went from why can't they get past the semi-final stage to now, why can't they win trophies under Solskjaer? And if, like you said, there is a blip like there was at the start of this season, say that 6-1 against Spurs, now off the back of what happened last night, are United going to hold fire next time? Especially if there's the likes of Antonio Conte and Zinedine Zidane floating around.
I mean, Zidane at Man United would be great, right? That would be an experiment. I mean, it would be exactly the same as Solskjaer, except the press conferences would have a French twang to them. Maybe it wouldn't be the same as Solskjaer. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd prefer, if it was going after Conte or Zidane, I'd go after Conte, you know.
Well, but hang on, if you're a Liverpool fan, you wouldn't, would you?
No, but we're talking about Manchester United here.
I know, but what I mean is, if you're a Liverpool fan, you want Zidane to be the Man United manager, right?
Well, I think a lot of Liverpool fans are quite happy that Solskjaer is still the manager. I mean, I think last night...
Okay, power rank those 3 for me quickly as a Liverpool fan. Is it Solskjaer 1, Zidane 2 and Conte 3?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But, yeah, look at his team selection last night. That to me looked like a manager who was afraid to hurt the egos of a few of the players, where you're talking about Fred playing, and obviously taking Fred out, you bring Pogba into the 2, and then you can get Rashford into the team. But, you know, there is a case that he could have left Rashford out, for example, and played Pogba on the left, but then he has Rashford as an option off the bench because he didn't use a player till the 100th minute. And United players looked absolutely shattered. They were a better team throughout the 90 minutes. They looked the better team in the second half. Unai Emery made a change where he brought on Coquelin to get some more legs in there. He obviously was then able to advance Pino into attack, and then when he brought Alcacer on later on, Pino came off, and then he changed his fullbacks at the end of the 90 minutes, so he'd have them fresh for extra time, and Villarreal looked more dangerous in extra time without threatening too much to score a goal, whereas 100 minutes you have to wait for Solskjaer to make his change, and that again suggests to me a guy that was afraid to upset some of his best players by taking them off in a final.
Phil, just on that has been Solskjaer all season long. And
yeah,
I think that's the point. Like that's why we're in kind of like a debate here this morning. That's why I think there's a slight overreaction last night. Not that Solskjaer did a good job at all, or that maybe he wouldn't have been better off with a trophy. That is not my point at all. My point is that he has shown an inability to even make a substitution, let alone the correct substitution. He showed it again last night. He is being slammed for that last night, but we should have seen that all season long.
Yeah, I know. It's all well and good saying he didn't make a change, and that's what I'm trying to make the point about having somebody like Rashford on the bench to actually be able to bring a player of that quality on. Whereas if you actually look at his bench last night, you were thinking, when's he going to make a change? But you're thinking, what change can he make? Yeah. Daniel James coming on, okay, he's a Wales international, but he's not as good as what was on the pitch. Now, he obviously would bring energy and he would bring pace, but Solskjaer would have been looking at that bench thinking, who can I bring on? It's clear that there's something there he doesn't quite see in Donny van de Beek. Has Donny van de Beek got a future at Manchester United? I don't know. But Daniel James was realistically the only option. Tellez was brought on, and Matter were brought on purely to take penalties. And Amad Diallo was an option, still very young, very raw, inexperienced. Are you going to throw him on in the European final? Because you throw him on and he has a shocker, then people are saying he got his substitutions wrong anyway. So these are things that Solskjaer will be able to say maybe next season, yeah, I learned from this, but also maybe this is an indication that United's first 11 is good, but they still just don't have that strength and depth in the squad.
Well, like we were making the comparison yesterday with Liverpool losing the Europa League final, and you go back and you look at that Liverpool team, and you look at the team that ultimately is the one that wins that reaches the Champions League final, that wins the Champions League, that wins the league. It's completely different.
Absolutely, yeah.
Klopp looked at that team and went, no, if I can't even win this competition, then I need radical surgery. And the first thing they did was, well, maybe not the first thing, but they got rid of Coutinho for a load of money and invested that money very wisely. If I'm Solskjaer this morning and I'm looking at my squad, and I'm looking at many of those players playing to what we would consider their peak over the course of the last 12 months, and some of them obviously not at their peak, but there's radical surgery required to get that squad to be competing with Manchester City.
Yeah, unfortunately for Manchester United, Manchester City are streets ahead of everyone this season. You would like to think that Chelsea will get closer to them next season, and who knows if Saturday's game gives a chance maybe to strike a blow for Chelsea to say we're coming for you next season. Liverpool can't be as bad as they were this season, and saying that they still finished third. So Manchester United have to look at how can they close the gap on City, but also that they'll have their work cut out to finish second even next season. Looking at the team last night, obviously the keeper, even before what happened last night, there was question marks over De Gea. Is Dean Henderson the answer? I'm not so sure. I think as the sample size becomes larger, we start to see maybe a few flaws in Dean Henderson, because I've said it all along, there's a big difference playing for Sheffield United and Manchester United, where there's times in games where you don't touch the ball for a long time and you have to make the right decision in the right moment, and we don't know if he is that keeper. I thought Luke Shaw, in fairness to him, has really turned his form around. Wan-Bissaka, as much as I like him as a one-on-one defender, I would question him positionally, and often teams are quite happy to let him have the ball in attacking areas because they don't think that he has the quality. Maguire missed out last night, but even if Maguire basically has played every game for United up until the injury that he picked up this season, that is not always going to be the case. They need serious cover in central defence, and they need a proper central midfielder that can run a game, and maybe that would also allow a change in formation. I'm not mad about that 4-2-3-1 formation. I think you look at the successful teams at the moment in the Premier League, they tend to play 4-3-3. Yeah,
I think that they've got the completely wrong constellation of players And, you know, when we were talking with Daniel Harris yesterday, he was saying Solskjaer likes to keep the game relatively simple. He wants to play front foot football. It wants to play aggressive football. It's like, that's well and good, and that's an attitude thing. But when it comes to those big European games, the opposition can work you out tactically and go, well, they've got players in the wrong positions, and we can find pockets of space here, and we can control the game. Like, there was a period last night where Manchester United had a bit of dominance, and if they'd scored, maybe they'd go on and they win the game pretty easily. But when they didn't score, it was relatively easy for the manager, the opposition manager, to look at them, analyse what was happening, make some changes, and completely nullify and essentially knock out Solskjaer as a relevant person in the game.
Yeah, and I think as well, what was very evident last night is the season is it's been a long season, and it goes back to what we were saying about the squad that Solskjaer has, where he hasn't rested players maybe as much as he would have wanted. And even you think back to the Leicester game, where obviously with the schedule he made all these changes, and you just saw how they don't have the quality to back up their first 11. So he's always going to pick his strongest team, and certain players like Marcus Rashford is getting a lot of criticism for his performance last night, but he looks like a player that's carrying a few knocks. He looks absolutely shattered. I think his form has been so patchy in the last few months that he's probably played himself out of a start for England at the Euros. Bruno Fernandes spent more time last night arguing with the referee than actually trying to influence the game. And again, he's a player that plays every week. They just looked absolutely shattered. So they have to go away and have a think about what kind of player they want to bring in. You know, this Sancho talk is not going to go away, but if you bring in Sancho, that's an improvement. There is positives to take out of the season for Manchester United, and I can agree with you that it was very important that they win a trophy last night, but also I still would have been very much of the thinking that if they had won last night, you'd be saying, yeah, sure, it's a trophy, but it's still only the Europa League. United need to be thinking bigger than that.
And that's the funny thing, Phil. It would have been very interesting to see what would have happened had Manchester United won the penalty shootout last night. Is Solskjaer all of a sudden a genius?
Well, no one's saying he's a genius. That overreaction isn't there. No one's actually thinking that, are they?
No, definitely not now.
But before, if they'd won, who
I mean,
where's the evidence for that?
Solskjaer's been held up as a hero at Old Trafford all season long. Like, I mean, it's hard not to root for him because he's an incredibly likeable man. But like, I think I would have been interested to see what would have happened had they won that penalty shootout last night. Just given the way this game was hyped beforehand, the importance of it, the history. All of a sudden, that history was coming home. Solskjaer got off the mark with a trophy at Manchester United. I would suspect it would have been unbelievably glowing in praise of Solskjaer as a season if they had won last night.
Yeah, I kind of think how it would have played out would have been, I can imagine his interviews after would have been, you know, this is just the start. Now we have to start trying to win bigger trophies. And, you know, 2 years down the line, the Europa League trophy became massive for United because they went on and they built on it. Obviously, that's not the case now. So we'll never know. But it certainly does beg the question, what happens if United don't get off to a good start next season? But in a way, the fact that they haven't won the trophy, Solskjaer can say to the board at Manchester United, do you know what? I think if we had a better squad, you know, I could have made more changes in that final. We're closing the gap with Manchester City, but they're still at the top. I need some investment. And maybe the whole Super League thing, this is how the Glazers get back on. Well, they're never going to be on side with the United fans because of the way they've run the club, but certainly they have to spend a bit of money. And there is, but we find ourselves nearly every summer saying United need 3 players.
Well, it's the stock and trade because they need 3 players. Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks, lads.
Phil Egan giving us his thoughts there. You can hear Phil, of course, this morning on Today FM. And, of course, you can read his stuff on otbsports.com. It is 7:59. Let's get to some of these comments quickly. That was embarrassing by Manchester United to lose, says Noel on YouTube. Was it embarrassing? Is it embarrassing to lose a Europa League final?
It was given the build-up. Because this was the coronation, wasn't it? And again, it was the Europa League coronation.
I don't think it's a coronation, right? I think
that's how it was billed beforehand.
But it's not, though, because I think the point that Phil made there was that he would come out afterwards if you won the trophy and say, look, this isn't the trophy we want to win. And, like, the parallels with Ferguson, where he's close to getting sacked, and then a scratchy enough team wins an FA Cup, and it's a trophy, and it buys you time. He doesn't have that time anymore. I think that's why. I think that's why this matters way more than they imbued. You're right. They did imbue so much meaning in it, and then when you lose, as you've said, you can't say this doesn't matter.
Yeah, like, again, this is just about not getting wound up on the outcome of last night. Like, I just think the narrative
in
this morning
finals, outcomes matter.
Of course they do, but
that's the whole point of playing the games.
I know that, but when it comes to the fact that this was actually in a penalty shootout, had David De Gea scored and the Villarreal goalkeeper missed, say that little change, that slight change, Manchester United would now have a trophy in their cabinet. So does that trophy then change the outlook of Solskjaer? This is my point. My opinion is that no, it doesn't. What changes the view of Solskjaer is the decisions he made pre-match, the decisions he's made all season long, the inability to make proper substitutions. That, for me, is far more important than Solskjaer winning the Europa League this season.
Largely everything you say I agree with. The one caveat is that footballers seem to think that somehow trophies have superpowers and that they imbue them with something that they didn't previously have, and there's a weird alchemy involved in the winning of a trophy. It's this kind of, like, even if you look at Harry Kane using it as an excuse to wanting to leave, or Robin Van Persie, his inner little child, wanting to leave Arsenal and go somewhere where he could win trophies. This seems to be something, apart from all the extra money they make, that inspires them to greatness. And all of a sudden, in that dressing room, people are looking around and there's blame gaming and there's finger pointing and they're talking to their agents and they're bitching and they're moaning and they're whining. Now all of a sudden, that's what the summer is. And look, maybe it makes Solskjaer stronger, because he comes and he does a Klopp and he says, this team's rubbish, actually. For all the hype about the quality of our players, how many of them actually would make the team of the year, or how many of them would make, if you were picking a Premier League 11, not a team of the year, but actually picking a team, how many of our players would make that team? And the answer is not very many. Maybe none. Certainly you'd have some on the bench, but maybe none. And is that going to be a team who can go and win the league? Probably not. So what do you do? That's why I think last night is, and that's why it's really interesting. I think there's plenty for it to...
I know, we're going around in circles here, but I just think that evidence was available before last night.
Yeah, but last night made it everybody completely. There's no hiding it now.
Yeah.
That's true. You hide it over the course of a league season because there's 38 games, 1 week bad, 3 weeks in a row brilliant. They play some incredible football in the semi-final. The away matches in particular, but that's all gone. That disappears. All the good work gets blown up because plucky little 50,000 town. I really wish I'd watched the BT coverage now.
Yeah, so do I.
People get in touch with us saying it was shocking and hilarious. On the positives, McTominay showed he's starting to dominate the midfield without someone beside him. Big game for him, says Shane. I think that's the other thing here is that Manchester United fans are lulling themselves into this. Oh, look, Luke Shaw is great. Wan-Bissaka is great. Harry Maguire is great. McTominay, he's really brilliant. I'm look back at that Liverpool team that got beaten in the Europa League final and pick out the superstars from that team who are part of the team that goes on to win the Champions League. I don't know. Is Luke Shaw going to be this good every game forever? Is he going to be someone that you can now say you pencil him in and because of what he's done over the last 12 months? Or is this a one season thing for him? I don't know. Is he a championship winning left back? Is Wan-Bissaka a championship winning right back? Is Scott McTominay going to be Ilkay Gundogan next season, or Jordan Henderson? Is he going to be one of those players who you chalk in and say, yeah, week in, week out, we need this guy on our team, he's going to dominate?
Yeah, no, the answer is no.
So then he's not good enough, and off you go. Or great squad player, he's the new Matic, right? But Matic didn't get you to where you needed to go either.
No, there is obviously, besides somebody better than Fred or somebody more suited to the role than Paul Pogba, Scott McTominay can go on to a whole other level. It does seem that to pick him out after last night is a tad unfair. But it's interesting the point you make on Shaw and Wan-Bissaka. Two guys who've had brilliant seasons. There are certain elements of Manchester United season that have gone very well.
As well as they can possibly go.
So they've maximised certain elements of their squad, which would be the real worry for Manchester United next season. I totally agree that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is under more pressure as a result of last night.
Do you think he's still the manager in January?
I don't know how the season's going to start, but if they're not in the top two come Christmas, which is a very realistic possibility, I think Manchester City and Liverpool will be the top two next season, then I think he will be in a spot of bother because, as I say, Solskjaer has proven this season that he's a good manager, but he has yet to prove that he's a great manager.
Has he proved he's a good manager?
I'd give him good. I'd give him good on the season that we've had because I think there was just enough question marks about him. There were so many easy question marks about him early in the season.
In the performance rankings, he's in green.
Yeah, just about edging into green.
I think he's definitely still in amber, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe amber, but like I wouldn't have him in red.
No,
like,
he's not.
He's no immediate danger. But maybe it does.
Should he be in danger though? That's the point. Yeah. Like I don't know. Like it was last night a referendum on him. I've asked that question on Twitter. We'll see what the answer is. Shifty Lad says 2 super clubs beaten in finals lately to so-called smaller clubs, Leicester and Villarreal. In fairness, those 2 clubs really enjoyed winning, and something nice about seeing how the fans reacted. Watching there was like one of the fans at the bottom on the phone to somebody bawling his eyes out from Gdansk, phoning somebody back in the tiny seaside village of Villarreal. That was like, it's good. Obviously, because it's their first trophy, it meant so much to them, and that was a little bit of the extra magic. I think because there were stakes involved for Villarreal.
Yeah,
that helped up the stakes certainly from a neutral watching it from Manchester United's perspective. Zidane, Conte, and Allegri are all available this summer, says Will. Now, I think this is really important, right? Because I think that there was a point in Arsenal's history where Wenger was still clinging on to things that they could have gone out and they could have got Klopp. And that if they'd made the play for him and they'd put the architecture in place and said, you know, this is going to be how our transfer committee works, but you'll have final say, this is the money we have, look at this beautiful stadium. We just need somebody to bring a bit of rock and roll football to it, a bit of heavy metal.
They're two totally different scenarios. Like,
I'm just saying,
Wenger's the greatest manager in the history of Arsenal Football Club. Solskjaer's not.
He was coming to the end of his career. My point is that they didn't seize the moment. They waited another couple of another season, another second season, and it was like, look at that. Are they going to watch Conte go to Spurs? Maybe. I mean, maybe Conte won't go to Spurs. But are they going to watch Allegri? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Does Conte know the United way, though, Ger?
You sit on your hands. Well, I mean, that team, maybe the personnel there is perfect for 3 at the back and a packed midfield and 2 strikers.
Maguire, so Lindelof and Bailly playing every game beside her. Wan-Bissaka on the right of a 3.
Wan-Bissaka, that makes sense.
And then there's added protection for one of Bailly or Lindelof.
And you stick like you buy a right wing back or a right winger.
Yeah.
Or maybe the kid is such a great right winger that that's perfect.
Get more out of Alex Telles maybe as a wing back. Luke Shaw would certainly thrive on as a left wing back, you suspect.
And suddenly you can have Pogba and Bruno playing centrally, and everybody's kind of left leaning. Suddenly it makes a bit of sense. McTominay is fine because Harry Maguire steps up and fills space, or Wan-Bissaka. Like there's ways maybe to make that group of players work. That Solskjaer has been good enough to get them to second, and to get beaten by Villarreal in the Europa League final. Shows you how lucky United were this season. That Chelsea had a bad manager for half the season and Liverpool had injuries. Can't beat a mid-table La Liga side. United conceded even more than Liverpool, says Dan. So I guess what happens in the aftermath of finals like this is that we look back on the whole season now as a whole and start to recalibrate. And you're essentially saying Solskjaer has had a bad season.
Yes.
And last night was further evidence to make that case.
Not a bad season as such. He has shown failings during the season, and everybody's talking about those same failings last night. I'm not saying that the Europa League doesn't matter. Like, that would have brought so much happiness to the squad. As you said, this intangible thing. But the fact that they were in the Europa League in the first place shows that they have failed at previous points in the season. And those failures, for me, should be as important as the failures last night. I know you disagree with that, and fair enough. But I just think that there's a lot of, not scoreboard journalism, but a lot of reading into the outcome of last night, which, like...
Outcomes matter in sport. That's
do.
The whole point. This whole thing that scoreboard journalism is nonsense is like grand. If you're Dutch, you can 100% say scoreboard journalism doesn't matter because we don't really care about the outcome. All we care about is the fact that the football is good quality. Like Johan Cruyff talking about how crap the football was. That was you giving us that, wasn't it? You were telling us that about the Dutch. Johan Cruyff. Yeah. They reached the World Cup final. He's like, nah, I don't care. This is nonsense. That's fine. When you have that philosophy, that's fine. The rest of the world plays competitive elite sport to win.
Okay, but one of the reasons why they arrived at that outcome, I'm saying you should be reading into the reasons why the outcome happens, the actual decisions taken during the season, the decisions taken last night.
So then it was fate. Actually, Solskjaer was right. It was fate, but his fate was to lose because he's not a good manager.
He's not a world-class manager.
Well, in that case, then last night is actually the final nail in the coffin. Get rid of him.
Yeah, maybe he will be.
Because he ain't not going to get any better.
Maybe it will be. Maybe it will be. Like, I mean, there is certainly enough people getting completely carried away in the space of 12 hours. Like, you asked them at 8:10 last night, it is 12 hours, how they would have felt about it and how they would feel this morning. I think a lot of people have changed their mind. I just think that there was enough reasons during the season to sort of make your mind up before last night.
But are the Man United fans not entitled to like...
Of course they are.
Yeah, but to change their mind on the basis of success or failure?
I haven't necessarily changed my mind. Of course, people are entitled to change.
But the United fans, particularly, that's the bit of all sports relationships are faith, right? It's faith that something magical is going to happen. It's magic realism. That's the whole point of following a team, is that this year is going to be our year. Something weird. There's going to be a new kid that no one's ever heard of, or the manager is going to be such a genius that somehow our crowd of also-rans are going to turn into Jim McGuinness's Donegal. Something weird, some alchemy, as I said earlier, is going to happen, right? That's what it means to be a sports fan. And winning the trophy last night for Manchester United would have allowed them to continue doing that. And it might have given Solskjaer some kind of weird boost as well.
Maybe, yeah.
Now, the alternative is that he becomes Jurgen Klopp and rips the team apart and sells De Gea and sells Pogba and maybe takes a big decision and sells somebody else who people don't expect him to sell, and completely recast the team and signs 5 new players and goes, right, this is my team now.
Like, from what Phil was saying there, that's probably not going to happen. He certainly pointed to maybe too much loyalty on the part of Solskjaer. Now, in fairness, there was a good case being made during the season that Solskjaer put his arm around a lot of the players, made them trust the manager, and that sort of relationship helped them have good moments throughout the season. So it kind of works both ways, and maybe he needs to be a little bit more ruthless. That's certainly a criticism you could level at him from last night. Okay,
it's 12 minutes past 8 this morning. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180. You can WhatsApp that number, you can text it, you can get us on Twitter at Off The Ball. If you're a Man United fan, leave a comment for us. Tell us. We're asking if last night was a referendum on Solskjaer, or if you should have known what was going to happen. I mean, there's a very strong case that Eoin is making that actually...
You should have just been able to gaze into your crystal ball and predict that David De Gea would have missed.
We didn't learn anything last night, is what you're saying. And I think
that's if you take my logic to the end point, yeah.
Yeah, there's a very strong case that is 100% correct. I just want to bring you the joys of on the full-time whistle reporting and the 90-minute whistle. So the front of the Telegraph this morning is fight to the finish. What's going to happen? We'll keep going. United battle in Europa League is the headline after 90 minutes. And then... poor Mike McGrath, who's in Gdansk, is like, Cavani stuck a second-half equaliser to send Man United into extra time in Gdansk. There's like 1,200 words where he's talking about Wayne Rooney was on the big screen, and it's like, did you know this? Solskjaer, who came from a goal behind, when? 22 years ago when he won the treble at the Nou Camp, saw a transformed team after the break as they shifted momentum and equalised through Cavani's 17th goal of the season. But you got to write those full-time reports in the aftermath about how they bottled it. Did they bottle it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's all bottlers?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's give ourselves that clickbait headline.
No, do you
Manchester United bottled it. Yeah, I think to a certain point, because they were the better team on paper and they didn't beat the team that were weaker than them. And for me, that constitutes a bottling in most scenarios. The penalty shootout, though, was crazy. Like, how much are... there were so many moments last night when you felt, God, I really hope this guy does not miss. I certainly felt that when it came to Lindelof's penalty. I thought when Shaw almost missed, I thought it would be, oh God, that's going to taint his season almost. Bailly maybe as well. I thought that there would be enough of a reason to start apportioning blame to certain players who would have missed the penalty, and you were kind of like hoping that they would score, because again, this kind of comes back to the point that whoever was going to miss that penalty was going to be in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. And now all of a sudden we're having a conversation about David De Gea. Now, there's more to the David De Gea thing than missing a penalty, obviously, because it is that crazy statistic about never saving a penalty since, 2016?
Well, Tommy Martin on Virgin had a good... He did actually save one, but it ended up getting retaken. So even the one that he did save, I don't know if he'd come off his line or if somebody else... I don't know. I don't know the details of it. But, like, I mean, save a bloody penalty. Like, you know, I don't know.
There was a lot of going the wrong way, I felt, in the penalty shootout last night. Francis Coquelin's penalty right into the roof of the net probably summed up. But like, was everybody just buzzing after playing in front of fans for 120 minutes?
Maybe.
Like,
I thought that was a bit of a fluke. I thought that had the bang of, like, was it Matty Holland hit the crossbar? Where that one was going to, like, cannon back off the crossbar and cross the halfway line. Yeah. Because Francis Coquelin, I thought, definitely was like, I am just going to put my foot through this and I don't really care where it goes. It might go to the moon, I'm not sure. Look, we're a bit late, 16 minutes past 8. We've got to take a quick break. We're going to be back with more. We're going to be talking about the latest edition of the Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran pod with Tommy. We're going to be talking to Andrew Omobamidele about his first call-up to the senior international men's team. We'd love to hear from you. The Man United fans are agitated this morning. If you're a Liverpool fan, we'd like to hear from you too. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
Lads, it's official, right? No GAA player was practising tackling at all during lockdown. They were practising that dummy bounce.
Defenders got complacent. They didn't have to mark anyone. If you were playing on the full back line, you didn't have to get touched tight. You didn't have to dog a fella because you three your mates standing 10 yards away from you.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
18 minutes past 8. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. And a reminder, of course, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Get involved in the conversation. Hit us up on Twitter. Leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We are broadcasting everywhere this morning, as we are every morning from 7:30 all the way through until 10. The best place to get us these days is on OTB Sports Radio, and you'll get that on your Alexa or your Google Home. Just tell them to play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn, and you can tune in live all day for 24 hours continuous top quality sports content. Now, let's hear from one of the rising superstars in Irish football. Eoin caught up with Andrew Omobamidele yesterday at the launch of the Intersport Elvery's FAI Summer Soccer Schools programme. The FAI Summer Soccer Schools returned to over 300 venues across Ireland in July and August. They cater for boys and girls aged 6 to 14 in a fun and inclusive environment with training provided by FAI accredited coaches. And parents right around the country are absolutely delighted about the fact that they are back. Here is Andrew Omobamidele, one of Stephen Kenny's new call-ups to the Irish squad.
OTB AM.
All right, Andrew, first things first, congratulations on the call-up. How did this week feel?
Thank you very much. It's a very proud moment for me and my family. When I got the news, my mum, I was in the gym at the time, got home, my mum was jumping all over the place and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a very proud week and proud moment for me and my family.
How did you find out the news?
Obviously over there's a phone call and there's a couple of talks around it, but you never want to get too excited until it's confirmed. So obviously when the team sheet came out and you see her name, it's just amazing.
Have you had many conversations with Stephen Kenny over the last few years?
Yeah, I've seen Stephen when there was 19s in Armenia. Came and done a bit there, so I knew him from that, and he's been obviously keeping tabs on all the players, and yeah.
Are you buzzing?
Yeah. Can't wait.
It's not been a bad month or two for you. I mean, 2021 has got off to a pretty good start. Can you talk us through the Norwich experience over the last little while, and that experience of, I guess, living up to expectations of coming back to the Premier League, because that's different from being a bolter. People expected you guys to come back up, and it happened.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy how football changes so quick, because at one point during the start of the season I was 23s, and then halfway through the season, Christmas time to the end of the season, you're lifting a cup with the first team. So that's just proves how fast football changes, and how you just kind of need to keep your head down and kind of just shoot for short-term goals, because I think obviously you want short, medium and long-term goals, but for me, in football terms, I kind of keep my goals short, so I just keep my head down and hit the next goal after that, if that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's been a crazy few months for me, and it's one that I won't forget ever.
So if somebody asks you, where do you expect to be in 10 years, you're not entertaining that sort of nonsense?
Obviously you think about stuff like that, but yeah, as I said, short terms I think in football are better, because you're kind of just knocking the next one out of the way and the next one out of the way, so yeah.
How did you react when you were told that you would be stepping into the void after a couple of injuries, a couple of setbacks in the central defensive department for Norwich? Was there a nervousness there at all, or were you absolutely chomping at the bit to go?
I think it was a mixed bag, to be honest. I remember the Monday a couple of the centre backs got injured, and I knew there was a possibility that I could start on the weekend. So I kind of got myself in that mentality of, all right, I'm going to play even though maybe I wasn't, just in case if I did play I was ready, if that makes sense mentally. So when the weekend came and I seen my name on the board, it was kind of obviously nerves hit you, because you're like, oh, it's my first start, and you want to kind of impress everyone. But then during the whole week I was preparing myself mentally, saying that I was going to play, so I was ready, but obviously there was a bit of nerves there. But once I stepped on the field, the boys like Skip, Grant Hanley and stuff like that, perfect role models and like professional, just giving me little pieces of advice before the game and stuff like that. So after the first couple of passes, I was fine.
How involved is Daniel Farke in a week like that, building up to that? Is he having conversations with you to try and get you settled?
I think, yeah, obviously there's a couple of conversations, but I think he kind of trusts in his young players and stuff like that, not to over kind of speak to them and say, oh, you're going to be playing, because that might still make you a bit more nervous, because the manager's like, you kind of know that he's maybe looking at you a bit more, if that kind of makes sense. So he kind of leaves you to do your own thing, and I think it works. As I said, he trusts his players, so kind of gives you that sense of responsibility. So when you're going into the weekend, you kind of take it by the scruff.
We saw the scenes of him having a chat with you after the Huddersfield game on the pitch, so he leaves you to do your own thing to a point, I suspect. What was that conversation like?
Yeah, that was just, I think we were 6-7-0 up at the point, and there was a throw-in on the right side, and obviously it was the last few minutes, and I wanted to play, like I wanted to get on it and play, but yeah, it was just talking about maybe if a game in the Premier League, let's just say it's not going to be 7-0, it's maybe we're winning 1-0 and you get a throw in your own half, you don't want to be really getting on it and playing. So but yeah, it was just a conversation like that, maybe tucking in, just keeping it more tight at the back, even though we're 7-0 up. So yeah.
What's been the biggest learning from you, or the biggest part about the step up to first team football?
The biggest thing that I've had to learn going to senior team football is just getting the level and the professionalism and the standards that are required. Obviously the 23s at Norwich, the standards set really high. David Wright he's done an amazing job in setting the standards high on and off the pitch. So that wasn't too hard to adjust to going up to the first team, because it was already set at the 23s. But football playing wise, I think there's a standard again on the pitch, training wise. Every day is 10 out of 10. You need to be 100% at it. You need to train the way you want to play on the weekend. You can't just switch it on and switch it off. It's one of those things. If you train well during the week, 9 out of 10 times you're going to perform on the weekend.
Has there been a conversation about your role in the team next season in the Premier League?
No, there hasn't been them kind of conversations. I think for me now, I just need to have a good pre-season and keep my head down and just keep working.
There's been talk comparing you to Ben Godfrey, obviously, who is having an amazing time at Everton. I think he's obviously involved in the England setup now at this point. There might be talk about a potential loan away. Do you think that's something that you need at some point in your career down the tracks?
As I said, I think it's going to be down to my pre-season. I think anything can really happen if I have a good pre-season and stuff like that. So obviously it's good to be compared to Ben Godfrey, because he's an amazing player. I remember when coming and watching him at Carrow Road and stuff. He's amazing. But yeah, a long way to go yet to fill his boots.
Can we talk a little bit about your development and league slip for a little while, because there has been a lot of talk about development of football in Ireland. Could we just start by talking about how important playing for league slip was for you and winning that All-Ireland and getting noticed by Norwich City?
League slip was every time I think back of it, I kind of just smile, because it was such a good time in my life. There was because the players there, we all went to school together, so I'd be playing beside my mate that I'd be sitting inside in class, the midfielder, he'd be in the other class and stuff like that. So it was a real tight-knit club, and I think that's why around the period why everyone was starting to go League of Ireland and stuff, we kind of stuck together. And that's down to the coaches as well, Kenny Malloy and Robbie Fay, and there's so many more that everyone down at League United has done a little bit. We have so many players in academy football now as well, so it's a credit to League United.
Because you guys were all living in League Slip at the time, right?
Yeah, so I think the furthest person that played for League Slip lived in Lucan, and that's 10 minutes away. Because a lot of other teams were bringing players from Waterford, stuff like that, but we kind of kept it homely and tight-knit, and I think that's where success came from.
Why was that little pocket of Ireland so successful at producing youngsters during your upbringing, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's that you could say it's down to the coaching as well. I remember when I just joined Robbie Fay, he's an amazing coach straight away on the technical stuff and stuff like that, volleys and stuff at that young age is so important, and he's a credit to himself. I think even the other day I was at Leeds United and he was still out with the cones and stuff like that, training the young guys, and he's giving them as much training. He's trying to replicate what they're doing in England, because at the end of the day, like, we want to produce a lot more footballers. So at that age, trying to give them as much training as he can give them is probably the best bet, and that's what he's doing down there. And obviously when Kenny Malloy kind of took over my development, he's done an amazing job, and he's still heavily involved in my football today, on and off the pitch stuff. I'd still go around and have dinner at his house and stuff like that. So yeah, Leeds United always have a place in my heart.
And who moved you away from a striker when you were a kid?
I think myself, my goal scoring record kind of moved me away. Yeah.
What sort of goal scoring record are we talking here?
I was on about 50 or 60 at one stage, but that was third team and stuff like that. So when I started moving up, I kind of lessened and lessened. So dropped into midfield. Then I started growing a bit more. So dropped me in centre back, and I kind of just took to that position.
It's probably no harm, given the way the game has gone. Centre backs nowadays need to be extremely adept in the ball. Having the experience as a forward or as a midfielder probably helps in the long run, does it? Yeah,
definitely. I think, as you said, the game's changed a lot, and obviously you want to defend goals. That's your job. That's your first job that you need to do. But obviously, if you can play on the ball and you're comfortable with it, that's a bonus. So as you said, football today, you need to be good on the ball and stuff like that. And I think, as I said, Robbie and Kenny and all the boys down at Leeds United have, from day one, kind of put that technical ability to all our players down at Leeds United. So yeah, definitely that will help me in the future.
Are we going to see some midfield performances from you in the future, do we think?
Maybe, we'll see.
We're not going to talk about what happens down the line. You've already said that you're just focused on the here and the now, but in the here and the now, is there anybody that you watch, anybody that you look to try and grab a few tips from? Not even just within Norwich, but even on TV if you're watching some of the top teams around Europe?
Yeah, I think every game I watch, it doesn't really matter the team. I always kind of just, obviously I watch the game as a whole, but you obviously look at the players in your position. So there's a lot of players that I could pick out. But obviously Van Dijk was the best defender in the world, and I just love taking like a little bit of tips, and I think all centre backs should, because he's just quality, just the way his calmness when he defends and stuff like that. I can name a lot. There's Konate from Leipzig. There's Upamecano as well. Ruben Diaz, he's only 23, 24, he stepped into the City side and he's taken over the defence, so I kind of just nitpick and just try to take as much as I can and try to soak up when I'm watching games as well, just to try my best to add it to my game or start working on it.
And just to round up then, Andrew, you mentioned there at the start that your mother was over the moon this week when you got the call up. Can you describe those scenes in the family home this week when the realisation happened that you were going to become an Ireland senior?
Yeah, so as I said, I was at the gym and I came back and I was kind of jumping up and around the place. A couple of tears here and there, but she won't want me saying anything about that. But yeah, it was a great moment, and there's a couple of my neighbours and stuff with the little kids dropped in a few notes and stuff saying congratulations. So it's a great time for me and my family and Leagueship as a community as well, because we're a tight-knit community, and I'm sure for them seeing someone playing in the senior team that played for Leeds United is great as well. So it's a great time for Leeds.
Do you think your mother knew this was going to happen, that you were going to become an Ireland senior?
I don't think you'd say she knew, but I think she was kind of hoping since day one. Really, that's what she's always talking to me about. Imagine playing in the seniors, World Cups in years and years to come. Please God, stuff like that. But yeah, she's my mum, and she has every mum has high expectations for the kids. So.
Well, you certainly lived up to them so far, Andrew. Congratulations once again. Very best of luck over the next little while, and best of luck in pre-season.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
OTB AM.
Norwich City defender Andrew Omobamidele there talking with Eoin at the launch of the Intersport Elvery's FAI Summer Soccer Schools programme. Got his head screwed on for an 18-year-old, and we've all got very high hopes for him and high expectations too, just like his mum. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Andy Mitten's going to join us in a couple of minutes on OTB AM live from Gdansk in about 10 minutes or so. Right now, they're talking Gaelic football because episode 3 of the football pod with Paddy and Andy is available. Here's Paddy Andrews on the lost art of defending and whether Dublin can replace John Small.
It's very difficult to try and get someone to replace him because of the experience he has, and like he's been there for 3 or 4 years and he's in top form. Dublin will always have depth, but whether they can do if they're playing at Tyrone or if they're playing, say they were playing Donegal, Small could easily go on Michael Murphy and just that's your job. Just leave with him. But on it, aside from John Small, and we might get onto it. That defensive style of play and the defensive systems and how teams are moving away from that. Lots and lots of defenders are now being found out because they're being asked to defend, man mark someone. And I know we'll talk about it when we get through it, but
let's get into
the art of actual defending. I'll give you it is like I said, Donegal, right? Donegal under Jim McGuinness would never have conceded 4 goals in a game. They would, and Monaghan easily could have scored at least another 2 or 3. But you're looking and going, well, what's changed? But Jim McGuinness' style of play wouldn't win the All-Ireland now. So as good as they were defensively, you can't play like that anymore. Dublin have done that. They've brought the game on over the last 4 or 5 years that teams looked at it and said, okay, you'll get to a point of success by playing this defensive system, playing this blanket defence like Tyrone did with Mickey or Jim McGuinness, obviously with Donegal. But Dublin basically kind of broke that down. And that's why anyone who's had reasonable success over the last 6 or 7 years against Dublin, they attacked. That's why Mayo were always Dublin's toughest game. Kerry in the 16 semi-final or the 19 All-Ireland final. All of a sudden, they were playing man-on-man defence because the only way to beat Dublin was to outscore them. So teams are slowly starting to change their style of play now, and that's what Declan Bonner is trying to do with Donegal. You can see it, like Tyrone, we spoke about this with Logan and Dooher coming in. They're playing a way more expansive style of play. They scored 2-15 against Armagh. They could have had another 3 goals themselves. Armagh have come up. They're playing this attacking style of play. But what that's doing, it's taking the comfort blanket away from these defenders. Whereas if you're playing cornerback 3 or 4 years ago, you don't have to be touch tight to your corner forward because there's 13 of your players inside your 45. There's nowhere for them to run to. And defenders just got complacent. The art of standing a man up, near hand tackles, being an absolute pain, like a John Small or a Lee Keegan. I am going to ruin your day. That mentality for defenders was gone because they had all their mates beside them. And if you look at, say, Donegal is the obvious example from the weekend. Now, all of a sudden, Eoin Gallagher, who's brilliant at going forward and looks really flash, but if you're playing cornerback, you're being asked to mark someone now. You're being asked to win balls coming in one-on-one. We spoke about Neil McGee. Like Conor McCarthy's 2 goals. The first 2 goals, he did the exact same thing. He runs out to the sideline and his man is standing behind him here. And he doubles back, makes a cut back towards
similar to what Con did against
exactly what Con O'Callaghan did at the Tyke Morley at the weekend, and it was like, lads,
and against Lee Keegan in the All-Ireland final,
semi-final 2 years ago. So, lads, this is not new. Like this is but defenders, they didn't need to be that sharp because they know there's 2 other mates behind them. Whereas Conor McCarthy comes out, does the exact same thing twice, doubles back, and his man is still running out this way towards the goal. And that's just your agility, your preparation, your understanding. I'm getting the better of this guy today. Whereas defenders haven't had to do that. And he goes and he scores a hat-trick.
Yeah. So, Tommy, good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How are we?
Yeah, good. Episode 3 in the can?
Yeah, it's a lengthy one. It ended up being an hour and 40 minutes of running time, but I cut it down to about an hour 25. Poor Paddy Andrews' laptop died halfway through it, so we had to get him back on then. But yeah, great stuff from the lads. We go deep on analysis around Dublin and Kerry and the match. Paddy was obviously there with Eoin at Semple Stadium. They're talking about the northern teams and the innovations in Ulster. Andy Moran reckons that there's always innovations up north. And we did about 3 or 4 minutes on fly goalkeepers. I don't know if you noticed that in the injury time in Donegal and Monaghan, both Rory Began and Sean Patton were in like around midfield, in around the opposition 45, both attacking, both trying to force scores. So Andy Moran says that as a coach, with his coaching hat on, he's thinking what's the point in playing a keeper who can't run the length of the field? What is the point of playing a goalkeeper who cannot run the pitch? It's an extra man. It's not like in soccer where everyone else can't handle the ball. All 15 players should be able to pretty much do all the skills of the game. So that was an interesting few minutes. And my favourite part of the whole podcast, though, was the first 15 minutes. So if I can encourage anybody to go and listen to that, it's great crack. It's all about faked hands, the height of the boom, helicopters, business class in New York City, and Kieran MacDonald. So some good stuff in there.
Charlie McCreevy even gets a mention. I do want to just point out that the analysis on the football pod was very different from the analysis that we got on this show. Even though Eoin was sitting beside Paddy Andrews, it appeared certainly the public stuff that Eoin was given to us was very different from what Paddy was saying. Paddy came away from that like really breathtaking away by the quality of the performance in that third quarter, and the pace and the intensity and the hard-running ability of Kerry, and also what it means for them down the line is that they now have strength and depth, and they have permutations, and they have the opportunity to play horses for courses was the phrase that he used. And interestingly, I don't know what your social media was like last night. Obviously, in the middle of the game, everybody was very distracted by Manchester United in the latest meltdown. But to his local audience, Eoin has given the good stuff. The headline on his piece on Kerry's Eye this week.
What is this?
I didn't see this.
Is horses for courses. It's like
very interesting.
The two lads come away and they're like, yeah, look, but Eoin not telling us that. He's like, look,
Wow,
these Dublin team, they're sensational. They're, you know,
I did say it on
give it to them now was one of the phrases he used.
I did say it on the show the other day. In fairness, I did say that you need to have a specific game plan for Dublin and a specific set of players for Dublin. So that's the horses for courses piece, and that's why that's the headline. I do think, Tommy, you need to have you need to have your plan A for whatever you want to do to a team, but I think everybody needs to have a Dublin plan if they want to win in All-Ireland.
And
100%, yeah.
All joking aside, it did sound like Kerry have kind of got that after the weekend.
I don't know what you're going to say here, but I felt like that 15-minute spell where Kerry really, really, really got on top of Dublin. It did remind you of the moments in the All-Ireland Final in 2019 where they got at them and you're like, okay, there's something going on here. And the moments where Mayo would go into the lead, or they would go man for, or they would match Dublin. It's the only way to get at Dublin is to go at them. And to that level of intensity that Kerry brought, that level of bite, like David Clifford had a bit of anger about him for that 15 minutes. The anger was on, Ger. You got to play like that against Dublin.
Yeah, that was actually probably the most pleasing part, the anger. And Andy Moran's Mayo team definitely had that in spades. That sort of, there was almost this blissful ignorance to what they were coming up against at times. They were like the best team of all time, and they were like, "No, screw you, we're Mayo. We're actually going to go right to the death with you."
Yeah.
And I think you kind of need that little bit of pig-headedness, a little bit of a lack of awareness of what the scoreboard might be saying at times. And I think that's certainly what Kerry showed on Sunday was that they do have that. Like the one issue is obviously the lead that they concede early on, but I know that.
Yeah, I still can't get my head around some of the Kerry defending, and we didn't really get the answer to it. Paddy is convinced that the art of defending is dead, and it happened because of all the blanket defences for the last decade.
Well, Brendan Devaney made that point on the show last year. Like it's definitely true.
Yeah. I don't know, but the rest of you but there's intermediate football don't have a huge amount of man marking fullbacks either, and I've seen that over the last couple of years.
Are you going to become one of them in the latter stages? Veteran.
The lads will give me a bit of a rinsing towards the end of it about my own football credentials. So if you stick to the end of the podcast, we're listening to it.
Well, we'll do that. Okay, where do you get it? What's the best place?
Best place to get it is the OTB Sports app. It's so handy. You go into the podcast section, you go into the football pod, or if you're already subscribed to OTB GAA, you'll get it there. We'll be putting a few little snippets out on Twitter. It'll go up on YouTube as well. But the podcast is there right now, and it's well worth listening to. I have to be honest, there's a little bit about Meath in it. A little bit about Meath. I tried to figure out why Paddy Andrews reckons that Meath and Kildare are so far behind Dublin. I do ask him, does his Leinster medals mean anything to him? And his answer's pretty interesting. But yeah, it's well worth digging out. The stuff around the fly keepers as well. Go check that out too.
Okay, the football pod with Paddy and Andy available for download. The best thing to do is hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It works really well on the OTB Sports app. We'll ping you a notification if you turn your notifications on every time one is live. Good stuff. Tommy, thanks for that. All 1 hour and 20 odd minutes of it is available for your delectation, and it's really some of the best analysis that you're going to hear from two people who are intimately familiar with the two best teams of the last decade or so. It's 8:40 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, please do. 0879 180 180. We're going to get to the rest of the Man United comments coming through in their droves in a little while. People definitely think last night was a bit of a referendum on Solskjaer. We'll put that to Andy Mitten a little bit later on. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We'll get to Andy in just a moment. I don't want you to do... Will we do your 90 seconds now on North Macedonia?
Yeah, Camille, it's North Macedonia morning, not Manchester United morning. Let's give ourselves 90 seconds for a breakdown of North Macedonia, our next team in Group C. So, North Macedonia at their first ever major tournament, and they're here thanks to the greatness of the Nations League. While Poland and Austria finished above them in their group, North Macedonia finished ahead of Israel and Slovenia, but it was those wins against Kosovo and Georgia in Path D of the playoffs that qualified them for this tournament. Goran Pandev, yes, Goran Pandev scored the winner in that game against Georgia, and they backed that up then by beating Germany, which you might remember at the end of March, thanks in part to Timo Werner's, one of his 500 misses from a sitting position so far this season. Pandev also scored in that game against Germany, and Alexander the Great, who isn't even a legit North Macedonian, has a 30-ton, €10 million statue erected of him in the centre of Skopje. Pandev, at this rate, is almost certainly going to get a statue double that size because he is North Macedonia's greatest goal scorer with 37 goals. He's also their most capped player of all time with 117 caps. They're running out the tournament because of him, and he turns 38 this summer. If they get any sort of win, he will be the oldest outfield player to ever play in a winning side at a European Championships. I guess you could say we are in the middle of a Goran Pandevic.
Hey.
No apologies for that one. Football in Macedonia in general, seen a bit of an uptick in recent years. FK Vardar became the first Macedonian club to qualify for the group stages of a European competition in 2017 when they got to the Europa League group stages. But incredibly, FK Vardar aren't even the best version of Vardar. Vardar's handball team won the Champions League in 2017 and 2019, and the sport was arguably a bigger deal to many than football until Pandev and those pesky kids came along and qualified them for this tournament. I've been stopped in my tracks by that whistle. There's no more you need to know about Macedonia except for the fact that they haven't even released their kits. But thankfully, Macedonian Footy on Twitter has posted a photo of the kits they were wearing last year. So do we expect something like this? I don't know. They're keeping their cards close to their chest, whatever's going on with the kit makers in North Macedonia.
Okay. Anything else that... what's your prediction for them?
To finish bottom of the group.
Right. But an amazing story to get there.
An amazing story.
This is where we patronise them the way BT Sport patronised Villarreal.
Yeah, exactly. They do have a couple of players worth talking about. They'd like to have Yanni Alioski of Leeds United, of course. We love Leeds United full-backs on this show. He may not be any Luke Ayling, but he is certainly a good player. He's going to have loads of influence from left wing back. He tends to stay there. He's not one of those players who gets moved into midfield because he's a notable name. He will play on the left. The other wing back is Stefan Riskovski, who plays for Dinamo Zagreb. Those two players are key. You'll have Pandev up front playing in a sort of roaming role. And then they've got Nestorovski playing beside Pandev, or maybe leading the line as well. He plays for Udinese, and again, just kind of bringing that big club experience. In terms of any other players that are worth mentioning, you've got Elif Elmas, who came close to joining Leeds last summer. Actually, he plays for Napoli, although mostly off the bench. And then their goalkeeper, Stole Dimitrevski. He is the starting goalkeeper for Rayo Vallecano, looking to get a move to a top La Liga team. He is keeping Zinedine Zidane's son out of the starting team at Rayo at the moment. So, great story, but bottom of the group.
Zidane's son probably not getting the shot at Real Madrid now that his dad has left. That happened in the middle of the game last night, if you missed it, by the way, as well. So it's 8:44 this morning. Our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League Final preview show in partnership with Pepsi Max takes place tonight at 5:15. We're going to be joined by Manchester City and Chelsea legend Sean Wright-Phillips, Manchester United hero Teddy Sheringham. We'll talk about that night in Barcelona. We'll also get the thoughts of Republic of Ireland's two-time MVP winner Denise O'Sullivan. The only way you can get to see the full no-holds-barred show is to be registered for the night. Get your tickets now on otbsports.com/events. Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar, and the hashtag is for the love of it. Now, let's go to Gdansk, and I'm delighted to say the founder of United We Stand, football writer with The Athletic, Andy Mitten, is with us. Good morning to you, Andy. How are you?
How am I? Well, I've been much better. I've had hardly any sleep. It's raining in Gdansk, and Manchester United lost the final of the Europa League. So I'm not feeling great, to be honest, but it's part of life, isn't it, when you follow a football team?
Absolutely, it is. And I think we've been talking a good bit about the importance of a trophy in following football teams and what it can do, how it can be an inspiration and a balm to any of the wounds. Before I get into that, what was the press conferences like? What were the players saying? What was Solskjaer saying in the aftermath?
Well, I was working for TV, so I was working for a rights holder. So I spoke one-on-one with Solskjaer and also with Capoue from Villarreal. I thought he had a very good game, and I think he was clutching the man of the match trophy in his hand. And he was quite interesting because he said it was his job to push Bruno Fernandes into a more deeper position. And I think he did that quite effectively because Fernandes didn't have a great game for United. Ollie, there was sadness in his eyes. I can't even remember in detail what he said, but he spoke well. He basically said his team hadn't turned up, they hadn't created chances, and he was clearly disappointed. And I don't blame him. I think that if United would have won the trophy, you could say that this would have been a successful season, at least for now. Second and the Europa League, but United didn't win the trophy, and the mood will sink among the supporters. The lift of confidence will not come from winning a trophy. And it just felt really flat, and all the time behind me and in front of me, there were a few thousand Villarreal fans having the moment of their life. And I felt, I'm from Manchester, I've never hid my allegiance, hugely disappointed, but I was in Villarreal last week. I met some great people down there. It's a very humble town of only 50,000 people. I spoke to some of the players, did a big interview with Danny Parejo, and it's a good story. And that is the greatest moment of their lives. They'd never reached a final before. There were probably more Villarreal fans in Gdansk because it's so difficult for United fans to get back to the UK. And, well, they've had an absolutely great night. Me, I've had no sleep. I've woken up, I've looked out the window and it's raining. And I've got a day of being miserable. But, I'm very lucky to be here. But I'm really disappointed. I've seen Manchester United win European finals, and I've seen Manchester United lose European finals, and it's horrible. You've come so far. And I was at all these games this year. I was probably the only British journalist in places like Granada and Milan and Rome and Paris, and I'm very lucky to be able to travel during the pandemic for my job, B, to have the job that I do have. But you all sense it's building up to something, to a final and to a trophy, and you get to the top and the trophy doesn't come, and it's absolutely gutting, I've got to be honest.
We've been talking about the importance of the trophy and winning the trophy, and I think you talked about the confidence that the players get, but it would also have been something tangible for Solskjaer to point to and say, okay, so we're not perfect. We know the squad doesn't have the depth that it needs. We know that we still need several players, but look what we're able to achieve while we're on that journey to being great. And that's gone now. So that's for me, that's the most intangible but most obvious thing that falls out of last night.
You're totally right. He knows it's not a vintage team yet. He knows that United need 2 or 3 players before they can properly challenge and win the Premier League again. And in that respect, he's overachieved by getting that team to second. Okay, Liverpool had injuries. Chelsea really underperformed. But after 38 games, Manchester United finished second with a squad which still needs some work doing to it. But had United won that trophy, it would have given everybody a lift. And you use the word tangible. You're absolutely right. when I was speaking to those Villarreal players after the game, they were clutching A, a beer in one hand, and B, a medal in the other, a winner's medal. And they're leaving Poland happy and victorious. And the United players flew back to Manchester last night, and I'm sure the mood was just on the floor there. They knew that Villarreal could be tough opponents. They knew that they would be the best Spanish team they've faced this season. But Villarreal are still only the 7th best team in Spain. This wasn't playing Atletico Madrid in a final. And Manchester United must do better. They simply must do better. You've got top players who... and Bruno Fernandes, and it was very, very disappointing.
What did you make of the performance from Solskjaer last night then, his decision-making in-game and his team selection beforehand?
In hindsight, I wasn't convinced. I think it's easy to do that in hindsight. I didn't have an issue with his team selection. I know why he made that team selection. I thought he was quite bold, playing Pogba over Fred, who's been out of position. Pogba's got the quick feet to deal with the main Villarreal threat, which was coming centrally through Parejo, coming right from the back, Pau Torres, Albiol, they're the best players, and getting the ball with the combinations to Moreno. And United weren't sure where Moreno was going to play. They felt that Villarreal were going to play with 2 10s against a United central defence, which was makeshift. So that was the concern for the club. And they knew that Parejo technically was excellent. What I'd have more concern with was how late Ollie took it to make the substitutions. But, I was sat there thinking, who'd you take off? Rashford wasn't having a good game, but he's still capable of producing those moments like he did away in Granada, where he didn't have a good game, but he just controlled the ball, bang, goal. And who could he bring off? Most of his best attackers were on the pitch. It wasn't an attacking bench. And in the end, he did make all the changes in time added on. The players were exhausted. And it slipped into penalties. And all the penalties were fantastic. I didn't enjoy them one bit, I've got to be honest. I watched it and I felt because Villarreal were going first, there was always pressure on Manchester United. Lose and the season sinks. If you miss, the season is just over. And United kept scoring. And every time a United player stepped up, I thought, no, it's going to be Fred who misses it. It's Axel. It's just going to end for Axel. Or Dan James. And I'm just thinking, I'm not enjoying being in this position whatsoever. And I'm not even a player who's on the pitch. And then David De Gea had his save by Rui. I actually said before the game that Rui was probably the weakest player on the pitch. I know that United had targeted him, but they didn't really target him. That was the intention, but he didn't have that much to do, nor did De Gea. Until the penalties. The penalties were taken in front of the Villarreal fans. They were loud all night. They were louder than the Manchester United fans. It was easier for them to travel. They only needed 1 test rather than 3 or 4 or 5. And I just had this sense, and maybe I'm saying this with hindsight now, this slight sense of foreboding throughout. This is not United's night. But that was just a private feeling I had. It was like the fairy tale was coming true for Villarreal, and they knocked Arsenal out in the semi-finals. Parejo said to me last week, we're absolutely capable of defending any advantages that we have. And they did that. And in Pau Torres, they've got a very young and talented player. I spoke to him after the game. A, I was struck by how young he looks, and B, he was talking to people from Villarreal and mentioning the school, his friends. He knew everybody. It's a tiny, tiny place. It really is a blink and you miss it type of place when you go past on the train. And they've got a European trophy this morning.
The opportunity for a post-mortem in the aftermath of a defeat like this, and at the end of a season, particularly when it comes at the end of a season, we do get to sit back and sit in judgment on how everything went. And you make the point that Solskjaer knows his team is not vintage. It's difficult to get from the bit where you're second and then you add those 3 players. If we look back at the Liverpool team that lost the Europa League final, Klopp completely reworked that very quickly over the next 2 seasons, really. And that was a good bit earlier on, maybe in his time at Liverpool. So what they did was they sold Coutinho for loads of money and brought in 2 world-class players. There's a fairly obvious parallel with Manchester United and the possibility of doing that. Is Solskjaer the person who will make those really difficult decisions and sell the superstar player to generate the money to buy, or is he trying to just add on players and shoehorning them in?
I don't think United have got a player who would get the type of money that Coutinho went for, partly because Barcelona was so wasteful at that time that Liverpool clearly lost a very good player in Coutinho, but they took advantage of Barca at their peak wastefulness, which they now regret, and Coutinho's not been a success there. I think Ollie should stay. I think he should be backed, be allowed to improve the team, spend good money, bring in a couple of Bruno-class players. And this is me being wishful, but this is also what he wants as well. I don't think you're going to see him ripping up the entire team, because you might as well change everything and start again. And I do think that progress has been made, but I realise that I'm saying that from a position of weakness this morning after that final. And I think if he brings in a better central defender, holding midfielder, attacking right-sided player, maybe back up for right back, continues to move on some of the players, which he has done. He's moved on Lukaku and Alexis Sanchez, and I'm consistently told that the mood is better among the players. And I'm pretty convinced by that. Not always, but that's football. You're going to lose matches. But United didn't lose a single away game last season, and it's been an odd season. And I think they do deserve some credit for the way they came through the season in the league. But an FA Cup or Europa League win would have made such a huge difference. I don't think we're going to be seeing 9 changes next season among the playing staff from Manchester United. I also don't think that a lot of the very young players are immediately going to become first-team players. There's some really talented players, as we saw at Wolves at the weekend when United won. Players like Anthony Elanga, Shola Shoretire, but you're kidding yourself if you think they're ready to be playing every week. These are players who need to be going out on loan, need to be improving. So looking 3 or 4 years down the line, I would be optimistic. But look who United are up against. And the way the clubs are funded, who they're up against. Manchester City, Chelsea. Sir Alex Ferguson didn't have that. He was up against Arsenal or Liverpool, who were in decline. Arsenal, who had a brilliant manager, but who were hamstrung by a 38,000 capacity Highbury. The fans don't want to hear it, but the game has changed. Liverpool have got their act together. They've expanded Anfield as well. I know they had a bad season, so it's maybe better for the league, but it's more complicated for Manchester United. And I grew up thinking United don't win league titles. I think there's a lot of United fans now who were attracted to the club when they were winning, thinking United should be winning titles all the time, like Bayern Munich do, or PSG do, or Barcelona or Madrid. I think it's going to be pretty complicated, but to lift the mood immediately and to improve the team, which is more important than any mood, he's got to be convincing in the summer transfer window. Bring in at least 2 very, very good players. Not Donny van der Beeks, where you're thinking, is he, isn't he? Players who can come in and immediately make an impact.
That's a Jadon Sancho.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else that, like, at that level that you're thinking, yeah, okay, that's the type of player? Is Harry Kane realistic, a possibility? I mean, the money seems ridiculous. The
money is ridiculous, and for that reason, I don't think it's realistic. And if you ask Dolly now, who would he most like, he would say Kane, Haaland and Mbappe. Are they coming? It's so improbable that that's gonna happen. You sense, under Fergie with United winning everything, they would have had a go at Kane, but even then it was so difficult to get players out of Tottenham. And Tottenham are in a better position financially now. They're also more desperate. They're just not going to be letting Kane go. And yet if he came, he'd absolutely score goals. Cavani has been a success, so I think Sancho would be a much better fit. He's more gettable. I think the transfer fee could be worked. I think the issue there is his wages. United are not going to shatter their pay structure for one player again. The agent demands. But if he can play on the right, then that would allow Mason Greenwood, who's a very good player, to alternate between the right and to continue to develop as a forward under the wings, if you like, of Edinson Cavani, who's been successful. But he's not going to be around forever, given his age. It's encouraging that he is staying. Hopefully he can play next season as he played for the last third of this season. But I'm looking at best case scenarios here. Some of them players looked exhausted last night, and it's been a pretty intense fixture schedule. But then it was for Villarreal as well.
What did you make of Paul Pogba's performance last night?
At times I'm thinking he's brave, he wants the ball all the time. He's trying things which you need to try. At other times I thought he was playing too deep. I know that's not his favoured position, but he played there because he effectively replaced Fred. Sometimes you've got to take the chances, and I think it was in the 87th minute he headed over, and he looked to me in the press box that he was just cursing himself. You've just got to take the chances sometimes. These are the fine margins which win these matches. And wasn't his best game, but I thought Rashford was more disappointing than Pogba was. I thought Fernandes was more disappointing than Pogba was. So I wouldn't be singling him out. I wouldn't like to single David De Gea out because he didn't save any penalties, but the penalties were that good from both sides. I'm not sure any goalkeeper could. It was just a really unfortunate way. I can't say to end an epic tie because it wasn't an epic tie. And there were little points of frustration all over the pitch for Manchester United. And maybe that's a microcosm of where Manchester United are right now.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? That Manchester United's whole season was in the 90 minutes. It was a bad start. We've seen that all year. They roared back into it. They controlled the game for a period of time. But then the opposition manager made some changes and Manchester United couldn't react to that. It's like there's the period where they're at bat and they're brilliant. There's a period where they're trying to get going, and then there's a period where the opposition has got their number and the creativity just isn't there, or the reinforcements from the bench aren't there. And that's why we've been talking all morning about it's a bit of a referendum on where Solskjaer is, and if he's going to point to the fact that he needs one more transfer window to get to being fully his team, that's fair, I can buy that. But it does also then mean that the team needs to hit the ground running next season.
Yeah.
Because the clock will start ticking, and when the fans are back, he doesn't have the trophy to fall back on. So that complicated mix becomes even more difficult for him to manage.
I agree with all of that. When a manager's been at a club coming on to 3 years and it's 3.5 years, and that club is Manchester United, you've got to start delivering trophies. You just do. Sir Alex Ferguson had to, and he inherited a different club. And Ollie said to me last night, he has made improvements from where United were when he came in. And that specifically would be December 2018 when he did come in. But 4 months before that, United had finished second with 81 points under Jose Mourinho. And Mourinho definitely had his qualities. He said himself he deserved to be sacked after a terrible start and a car crash to that 18-19 season. But Solskjaer's got to win trophies. United might not be able to compete financially with City or with Chelsea, but actually United have still spent a lot of money. The ownership is another issue that's bubbling under. The Glazers will never be popular with supporters, and I've always said that United with the Glazers is like a swimmer with bricks on his back. The money which goes out to service the debts and the interest payments, it doesn't help Manchester United. And that's really come to the fore in recent months. But you said he's got to start next season, hit the ground running. It is such a cliche, but it is so true. If United are 8th or 9th by the end of October, I think patience will be wearing very thin with the club, with the manager. But I think you should keep Ollie. I do think he's doing a good job. Not a great job. I think he's doing a good job. I just think he needs to bring in a couple of players this season and to continue to improve. And if they can start next season well, then it'll be something better than they did last season, because it was an atrocious start last season.
I have one last point on the ownership. With everything that happened with the European Super League and the perception, and I don't know if there's going to be a mild awakening or any interest even in the Glazers in the pressure that they were under. But when fans come back, unless they actually invest in significant players this summer, then that's going to be a long-term problem. So, if you're looking at this coldly as an investment, then you actually need to put some money in now to make sure that it maintains at the level that it's been at and that it continues to pump off cash for you in the long term. What I'm trying to say is I think there's a window of opportunity here for Solskjaer to point to the team, the fact that there was nothing coming off the bench and the unpopularity. In one fell swoop, sign Grealish, sign Sancho, or one of those, or a centre-back. And that will give at least until Christmas for everybody to go, okay, new team, new players, let's see what happens. But Solskjaer's got to get in there and make that case. I need 200 million or this is all going to hell.
Yeah, he does. And to spend the money well, because it has gone to hell with some of the previous signings. Manchester United's recruitment's been pretty poor since 2013. I think it has got better under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You mentioned Grealish. I'll add Declan Rice to that as two players who would fit into Manchester United's pay structure. You'd sense that they'd want to come. I know that United have watched Rice closely. I know that their opinion of him is higher than it was a year ago. They feel that he's slimmed down, that he played well against Manchester United in one of the recent matches. So you've got to be bringing in players where you're thinking this could be a top player for Manchester United in the future. With Rice, I spoke to his former manager, Manuel Pellegrini, and he knows far, far more about his technical levels than I do. And he's good enough to play for a top team. So signings will excite fans. The cloud of the ownership, that's just not going to go away, even if United signed Lionel Messi and Mbappe. There's a fans forum meeting which Joel Glazer will attend in a couple of weeks' time. That will be important. And he's got to go way beyond saying, hey guys, I really like your passion. He's got to come up with something tangible. And I keep saying the word mood. It's got to be picked up off the floor. At least United will have a proper pre-season in theory. They didn't have that last year. But last year United went out to another Spanish team in the Europa League, and there's a bit of Groundhog Day about it, and doesn't feel great this morning.
No, I can imagine. Gary Neville on Twitter has agreed with your assessment. He tweeted, "You can't switch performance on and off like a tap. Haven't played well for weeks, and last night a continuation of the recent form. Pressure will be applied to Ole and the team, rightly so. Need to get it right this summer, and a good start to next season needed badly." It's interesting listening to some of what the ex-players have been saying, like Paul Scholes on BT last night immediately after the game said, the thing I worry about is, does losing hurt them enough? As a United player, when you lose games, look at the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've lost games. Does it really hurt? It's almost become an accepted thing. That's a stinging criticism from Paul Scholes, that the mentality, the winning mentality, just isn't in that group of players.
Well, by saying that, you're basically accusing someone of being unprofessional.
Yeah.
So that really, really annoys professional footballers. In the same way as when fans say you've got no heart, you've got no passion, players hate that. They hate it. And where does the truth lie? I suspect those players are absolutely gutted. And if they're not, they should be. This team, the United team, which Ole inherited, I think had lacked characters. I think there are stronger characters in there now, but you're always going to be compared to the great Manchester United teams of yore. And is Fred Roy Keane? Not at all. I thought Scott McTominay had a good game last night. Is he at the same technical level as Kevin De Bruyne? Not at all. And the margins are fine when you get to the levels where you need to be winning trophies. It was frustrating to watch, but you've got to credit Villarreal. They had a game plan, they stuck to it, and it served them well, just as it has done all season. When they were flying to Azerbaijan and Eastern Turkey and Croatia, and they flew more than any team this season. And it wasn't a fluke, them winning. It wasn't a terrible night because Manchester United, missed so many chances. United didn't create the chances. United didn't turn up. And it's hard to argue against that result.
Andy, it's been great having you with us this season. I'm sorry it's ended from your perspective in such miserable fashion in the rain in Gdansk, but we wish you a safe journey home, and thanks a million for being with us.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it most of the time.
That's Andy Mitten there, founder of United We Stand. You can read his stuff in The Athletic and 442 as well. It's if you want to get in touch with us, 9 minutes past 9 this morning. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. The comments are pouring in on YouTube and by text as well, and we'll get to them in just a little while. But in the meantime, we've got another Euros cheat sheet coming for you. Who we got?
We've got Austria. Let's give ourselves 90 seconds. Never have they got out of their group at a European Championships. They finished bottom of a group involving Iceland, Hungary and Portugal in 2016, and they have not qualified for a World Cup since 1998. But they will fancy their chances of getting out of a group this time with the group they're in. As you've mentioned, they've got North Macedonia. They've already beaten them twice in qualifying, and when they finished second in Poland's group. And their nickname in the local tongue is Das National Team. Unfortunately, I don't speak Austrian, so I can't translate that one for you. But the main player on Das National Team is still David Alaba, who we know all about. We have yet to see a position that David Alaba is unable to play, and reports this week suggest he is very much going to be a Real Madrid player next season for the national team. Das National Team. He's likely to play on the left wing this summer. Now, 20 of Austria's squad members play for German clubs, but the one I want to mention next plays for a Chinese club, earning a big fat £200,000 a week. It is, of course, Marko Arnautovic, who you might have forgotten even existed, playing in a league that you might have forgotten even existed. He's 5 games into the new season with Shanghai Port, playing with Oscar and Aaron Moy in a team entirely comprised of players that you owned in FPL in 2017. They are top of the table, and Arnautovic has already scored 3 goals. He was also Austria's top scorer in qualifying, and between himself, Alaba and Marcel Sabitzer, there might actually be an attack worth watching in this Austria team. Finally, let's have a look at the kit. A word of warning, please contain yourselves. Look at that absolute beauty. That is the home kit for Austria. And then the away kit, also just perfect.
It's basically the Arsenal jersey. That's why you like it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just so gorgeous. I mean, it's so nice.
You're such a homer.
It's so nice. I mean, like that home jersey for Austria is the one that I would pay money for above all others. That's just name a better international jersey.
It's just the Arsenal. It's just the old traditional Arsenal jersey. That's exactly what it is.
Well, Puma didn't nail it for Arsenal during their tenure. Adidas have had a much better stint in charge of the Arsenal jersey, but Puma have certainly nailed that Austria jersey, and it's lovely.
Austrians speak German, Eoin says Bernard Lawless.
I know that.
Austrians are sound lads and very good drinkers, says Will. And Guten Morgen, says Frank.
No, actually, I actually didn't know that about Austrians. I think that was actually supposed to be a joke. But I wrote it while delirious after the Manchester United game last night at about midnight. So to be honest with you, I don't really know.
That's fair enough. Okay, we are going to I want to do some of these quick comments very quickly. Let's hear all the biased pundits of Slaughter Spurs say Fernandes, Pogba have to leave to win a trophy, says bitter Spurs fan Eamon on WhatsApp. That's a Harry Kane. Okay, I get it now. Well, I mean, maybe selling Pogba might make them the money that they need. If they win the World Cup, you'd want to play up the whole, wouldn't it be great for Qatar to give one of their own players, if they win the Euros, wouldn't it be great for Qatar to give one of their own players the World Cup in Qatar? That's how you would be selling it as Manchester United to try and get PSG to splash out the cash. You may as well play the game that's being played at the moment in geopolitics and world football. If there's going to be some sports washing, then,
lean into it.
Exactly. Justin on WhatsApp says, we have to give Emery credit for last night. He gave them so much energy. Even before the pens, they looked so much more motivated. Emery, good manager. It's true. Ole was brought in to re-implement the United way, to be a transitional manager who had the job of turfing out the players who didn't fit the United way. We've brought in some top quality as well. Bruno Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but this is his last transfer window. I feel to make 3 top-level signings: Sancho, Grealish, a centre-half, Kane is a long shot, and to get rid of the rest of the deadwood: Jones, Dalot, Mata, Martial. Then the reins need to be handed over to an experienced manager who wins trophies. Certainly worth a phone call to Zidane to perhaps get a pre-contract for January 22 or the end of the season. That is a lot of jiggery-pokery that will go on to give this manager 200 million to sign players and then sack him irrespective of what's going on because you've signed the deal with Zidane. That's the level of craziness that we have at the moment. But, stranger things have happened in world football. Of course, sacking the completely inadequate Ole Gunnar Solskjaer today is never going to solve all of moronic United's many problems, but it's the very first thing that needs to happen to start addressing them. Ole inherited a complete mess. Every transfer he's made has improved the team and reduced the average age. The team have been inconsistent, but as Ole weeds out more weak links, they will get better. Every transfer he's made has improved the team. As somebody earlier on said, he said they spent 100 million. They spent 75 million last summer, and none of the players they signed started the game last night. That's not a successful transfer window by any imagination. Donny van de Beek has been a complete failure, and that was 35 million. That was the bulk of your transfer kitty last year, and it had no impact on the season, zero impact. So that signing needs to be weeded out, and the process that they went through to arrive at going, yeah, this is the guy we need. Whatever they did there was the completely wrong thing to do. George asks the question that always gets asked: if Manchester United sack Solskjaer tomorrow, would any other Premier League team want him as manager? I don't think so. He's way out of his depth, he says.
It's a question that's been asked at a lot of junctures this season, hasn't it?
He's definitely a better manager now in terms of how he is perceived than he was when he was at Cardiff. I think somebody would be willing to give him a chance. Ollie's inability to make common sense changes and complete lack of trust on squad players is what's cost us. We need a much better defensive coach who can teach us how to defend corners and free kicks. Karl Anke has done some good work on the goal they conceded last night, being a carbon copy of many of the goals they've conceded this season. And then Richard says, I really liked Eoin's viewpoint today at Manchester United. It softens the immediate frustration of last night. Eoin giving comfort.
I appreciate that was the outcome of what I said, but that was not my decision when I was actually saying that earlier on. But I'm glad that somebody's looked at it in a positive way. Thank you, Richard.
9:15 this morning here on OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We will be back telling you what the hell to watch this weekend when there's no sport on apart from the European Cup final, all the league games, etc, etc, etc.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League Final preview show.
In partnership with Pepsi Max, takes place this Thursday, May 27th. We'll be joined by Manchester City and Chelsea legend Sean Wright-Phillips. Manchester United hero Teddy Sheringham will relive that night in Barcelona, and we'll get the thoughts of Republic of Ireland's two-time MVP winner Denise O'Sullivan.
You must be registered for the night to see the live show. Get your tickets on otbsports.com/events.
Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar, hashtag for the love of it.
Invisible Threads, a Go Loud original.
As we celebrate the 6th anniversary of marriage equality, Invisible Threads meets older members of the LGBTQ community who reflect on their journeys and tell their stories. From shame and isolation to conversion therapy, from living with fear to coming out as an older person. Join me, James O'Hagan, for this powerful 8-part series, winner of the first Go Loud Podship.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, it is time for us to turn our attention to what you should be watching. Sue Murphy is with us. Sue, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, how's it going, guys?
Also with us, of course, is your partner in crime, Eoin Sheahan. What's this about?
Hi, guys. Yeah, I mean, this see, what happened was Sue and I looked around Marconi House, around Off the Ball Towers, and saw the Paddy and Andy pod, and we were like, what is going on here? How has this been able to start up as like the most successful thing that's ever come out of Team OTB? So Sue messaged me and was like, we should take a podcast. We should use a podcast to take those guys down. So that's what we've done. We started a new podcast. It is not about Gaelic football, Sue. It is very much about film and television.
Yeah, it's Let's Go Back To is the name of it. So it's on Go Loud and all your podcast platforms this morning. It should be, well, I posted this morning, so I'm hoping it's going to be there this morning. But it's basically a look back at film and TV shows that we keep going back to. And our first episode is with Simon Delaney, and it's on Glengarry Glen Ross. And when I say that man is obsessed with that film, that would be putting it mildly. He starred in a couple of productions of it, as well, and he's just like, his insight into the characters and the script is incredible. So it's live this morning and it's our first episode, so we're very excited about it.
Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin,
Al Pacino,
Al Pacino.
Kevin Spacey. Like, I mean, this is going to be all these episodes that we've put out are vastly different to one another. It's kind of like, let's see where this conversation goes. Let's see what each person brings to the table when it comes to their favourite piece of culture, either a film or a television show. But with Simon Delaney, it's like getting a bit of a masterclass, almost insight on what it is to play all these types of characters. I absolutely love this movie. I think that I'm now looking at it in a completely different way, given what Simon Delaney told us. It's interesting that Jack Lemmon is the first actor that you go to there, Ger, though, because I certainly would have thought that Al Pacino was the MVP of this. And Simon Delaney disagrees. He's a big Jack Lemmon fan.
Right. Okay. Well, obviously, Old Gil in The Simpsons is essentially the Jack Lemmon character from this movie, right?
Is that like? I think that's probably what it's based on. I mean,
yeah. No, I'm almost certain. Yeah. It's like he's the salesman down his luck. Unless there's I haven't seen Death of a Salesman, so unless it's about that, but it certainly seems like it's that. And that's the pop culture. That's the power of this thing, is that it has absolutely spawned these things. There's also like a very famous C-bomb dropped in the middle of it that is like the first time you see it. Particularly, I've seen a production of it as well. It's like, can you say that in the theatre? What? I mean, and
the language in this is unbelievable.
Well, when you think like the transmogrification of society from where you couldn't say any of these words at all ever in public, and now everybody says them all the time. Stuff like this is important. So anyway, look,
we had to list the podcast as explicit because of the swearing. There's a lot of swearing.
It's a good.
Mostly me.
It makes a good case for swearing. Like there's often a debate about whether or not is that really necessary. It's very necessary in Glengarry Glen Ross.
It's like, I'd say it was inspirational in my use of the C word for a long time until, I mean, there was definitely a long period of time where. Is that a different conversation for a different medium? It probably is, the pub. Right, so it's called Let's Get Back To. It should be up in all places where you get podcasts.
And podcasts, yeah.
It's on Go Loud. You can get that there. And we'll also stick it up for ease of access a little bit later on in the week as well. So the very first episode is available today and every Thursday on the Go Loud app. So what we do every Thursday here on... I feel like I'm your kind of,
conduit.
Sloppy seconds here. Yeah. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, 100. That is the aim. That's in the description of the podcast. For more and sloppy seconds, check out OTB AM on Thursdays.
Well, then you guys can take this bit over. Come on.
What are we doing this week, Sue? What's shiny and new?
A lot of Manchester United this week. So the United Way. I've seen one of the docs. I haven't seen the other. The United Way is the Cantona doc. That's on Sky Docs and it's on now. Please watch this. Like, it is just incredible. I can't get through talking about this without starting to laugh because Cantona, he kind of narrates it and it's presented by him. So he gives a history of United, but he very much, of course he's an important player, but he very much inserts himself as a pivotal moment in that history. So they go from 1957, 1958, Munich, and then it goes 1992 signing of Cantona. And I was like... Okay, there's a few things in there, and then it kind of goes back to Alex Ferguson, and it goes back to '68. So it's all over the place in some ways, but oh my God, it's brilliant because there's nothing in this that you don't know. It's Cantona's reaction to everything that happened that you're looking for, and like there's one bit where he's talking about the signing, and he's up doing the press conference, and it goes to him, and he's looking into the camera, and he goes, "The stage is mine. All eyes are on me." And you're just like, what the hell is happening? And then he goes into the Kung Fu kick, obviously, and talks about that. But while they're playing the audio, the camera is just on him for the entire time. And his reaction, like, I can't say, there's nothing new in it, but it's so engaging and funny. Like, you're laughing at moments where you definitely shouldn't be laughing because of his narration of it. And there's just no one like him. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
It's Gogglebox where Cantona looks at himself. He holds a mirror up to himself, you could say. Well, that sounds very theatrical and a bit arch. But is he knowing about the joke, or like? Because I watched back that when he got whatever the European awards that he got was. And,
I love football at the end. I love football. Yeah,
it's like he's quoting Shakespeare. And the camera cuts to Messi and Ronaldo.
I love it. It's one of my favourite videos.
I mean, I thought my English was good. I was like, worth checking out. It's Sefrin, I think, who's handling
brilliant.
all this stuff.
Like, he is just so engaging. And I like, there's a lot of talk. Like, I think the players have talked about this over the years as well. Like, Cantona was so different, and when he turned up to training, he trained differently and he wore different clothes. Like I can't remember which player was saying it, but they basically had to turn up, and I think it was Mark Hughes. They had on, the United Blazers, and Cantona just show up in like a velvet jacket. Like it's just like all of the stuff around him, and nobody batted an eyelid because it was Eric Cantona. So I think it's worth watching, but it just kind of makes it out that it's a United doc when it's not really. It is just. I'm Cantona and I was the greatest thing that happened to United, and he's not shy about saying that whatsoever.
Well, I think the Man United fans probably would agree in terms of like the saving grace of like maybe Ferguson doesn't happen, if that signing doesn't happen, that European Cup doesn't happen, the second European Cup doesn't happen, them being a super club doesn't happen.
He gets suspended and they don't win.
Well, they could have been, they could have been Leeds, they could have been Villa, they could have been, one of those clubs who was a very important historical club but then faded away. So you said that it's not just the United Way that's out at the moment. There's this other documentary that's doing the rounds at the moment. Alex Ferguson's health is obviously much better now and he's making public appearances. He's doing interviews, but the reason he's doing interviews is because he's made a documentary.
Yeah, it's going to be out on Amazon tomorrow. I haven't actually got a hold of the screener. It's been really hard to get a hold of it, but It's Never Give In is the name of it. It's directed by his son, and the whole idea behind it, it feels like these two docs that are out this week around United are actually very personal pieces for the people involved. Like it's Cantona and it's Ferguson. And Ferguson really goes through his family life and how he ended up at United, but very much that connection with his family. And a lot of the reason he wanted to do this was, his health issues. He said, my memory at some point is going to step away and I want to be able to record all of this. So it's a very personal piece for him. The clips are very personal. And I mean, Ferguson is he is the greatest manager of all time. We can say that. I've got to say it.
You're a Man United fan, obviously. I mean, there are other managers in the world who have achievements that are similar, if not better, in some instances.
I'm still going to say that. But honestly, his insight into the game and the club and how he built that club. And I mean, Ferguson talks a lot about how if he was a Premier League manager now, he wouldn't have survived. Out of the first few years, they were bottom of the league all the time. How did he get to a point where he's winning Champions Leagues and leagues every single year, and he has this amazing cast of players? So it's just like the two together. If you're a United fan, how lucky you are this week. There's some really great docs out there,
It'll soothe a bit of the pain of last night. I suspect maybe that was it. Maybe that was all part of the plan. They were like, let's wait for the next coronation moment in our great club's history to drop these two documentaries. Oh look, there's a second tier of Europe to be won on Thursday. That will spark massive celebrations around Manchester.
It's really
let's drop
sad.
these two documentaries.
The release dates had obviously been planned with a Champions League final in place, as opposed to
good point.
Ages and ages and ages ago. So all it's done is to serve to highlight the failure even more.
That's what I think.
I think it's Solskjaer's fault, like that these two documentaries dropped this week. To be fair, what have we got now?
Both very good.
What is this I'm seeing here? What is Cruella? I presume it's
Cruella is just actually, I really enjoy it. It's probably a little bit long. This is going on to Disney Premier Access, just to let you know. It's not a straight release onto Disney Plus, so it will cost you £22 to buy this. But if you have a couple of kids in the house and you're looking for something if you want to do kind of a cinema night, this is probably it's a big release, and we don't really have a lot of those at the moment. It's Emma Stone, it's the origin story of Cruella de Vil, and she is brilliant in it. But honestly, the whole thing is stolen by Emma Thompson, who plays the Baroness in it, who owns this fashion label that Emma Stone's Cruella ends up working for. And she just, every single scene she's in, she just steals it. I do think it's a little bit too long. I really at one point went, what happened to the end of that again? Which I should never be doing, but it's quite enjoyable. It's a very big production. And they're the stuff around the costumes and everything is incredible. I think it's a family film. There are a couple of things in that if you've got 8, 9, 10-year-olds, it's probably a little bit too advanced. I mean, there is a big tragedy in the first 15, 20 minutes, but if you get past that, it's a good family film.
The £22 thing is a thing, right?
Yeah. But when you think about it, if you went to the cinema, how much you spent at the cinema?
If you go to the cinema, you have a giant screen.
If you went,
you get completely transformed. It is there's a smell and there is a sensory overload and there is a history, and it's like a special thing. Sitting in your front room and paying £22 for a movie on a one-off. I mean,
it depends. How big is your television? How dark are your curtains?
And it depends how starved you are of family films that you would.
You can never make popcorn at home
that
that tastes as good as the popcorn. The slightly stale popcorn that you get, and the feet sticking to the floor, and the risk of a child rubbing something horrible in your hair at the cinema. Have you ever been to the kids screenings where there's actual kids?
It's chaos. I used to bring my brother, there's 13 years between me and my brother, and I remember bringing him to Finding Nemo, and I was like, I will never do that again. It was so stressful. Like, there's kids everywhere. Like, hanging out of the rafters. Anyway.
Something that you might have missed, Ricky Gervais was, I think, showing that there's season 3 of this. He had a clipboard this week.
Yeah, like, the thing about Afterlife, I actually gave up on the second season. I really love the first season of this show. His wife dies. A lot of it is him remembering his relationship with her, and he works in a small newspaper in a small town, and some of it is charming, and a lot of it is him really annoyed at life because he's lost his wife, and that works perfectly for Ricky Gervais. He's like, the jokes are really mean, really cutting, really witty. But what I didn't like about it was when it moved to the second season, it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to atone for everything that's happened, and I'm going to put into the relationships that people have given me. I'm going to put all the good stuff back into the relationship with them, and I'm going to do good things for people. And it didn't work for me. Like, Ricky Gervais being Ricky Gervais and being mean works. So the second series was just a bit, I think it went off a cliff. So I was a bit kind of skeptical about anything else coming around this, but the first season is so good. I mean, I devoured it. I watched it episode after episode, and it's just the raw grief he has. Like, there are so many scenes where he's sitting in rooms with his dog, watching videos, crying, and it's really, really touching. And then you're laughing your head off in the next scene because the jokes are really, really good. It's very, like, I think it's actually one of the more underrated things on Netflix.
So what's your situation with it then? Before season 3 comes out, will you go back and watch season 2 properly? And
yeah, I probably will. Like, I'm just hoping there's a bit more like cynicism that wasn't there in the second series. It's definitely there in the first. And that's what I like about it, is it's Ricky Gervais standing up at the Golden Globes and saying the thing about Harvey Weinstein that nobody wants him to say. That's what I love about him. And it just didn't happen for me in the second series, but I probably will go back and just make sure that I haven't missed anything that's amazing.
Okay. And you're still watching Mayor of Easttown. It's still getting rave reviews. It's still good?
Yeah. Yes, I'm on episode 3 at the moment. I've had to wait for my husband, who's an episode behind me, and I'm like, please hurry up, because everyone's on episode 5. So I said last week it was 8 episodes. It's 6. Sorry about that. But they're all up on the player. But it's just everyone.
Oh, so the whole thing, all 6 are up?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the 6th episode is out this week. Yeah.
Okay, so it's out this week. Now, those of us who are only binge stuff can get stuck in. Tommy says it is
watch it like that. It's definitely a weekly watch.
But the information is final episode isn't until next Monday. So from next Monday on, folks, it's open season on Mayor of Eastwood. Don't get involved.
No, I think you should watch
Easttown. Yeah. All right. Okay. And sorry. Tommy's very slowly typing. It's the 7th episode, not the 8th, not the 6th. The final episode is next Monday. So you're right, there are 6 episodes out at the moment, but there are actually 7 episodes in it. So this is our sloppy seconds, folks. This is what we get.
This is what happens.
This is the low quality that we're bringing on a Thursday morning on OTB AM, and all the good stuff.
My apologies.
Someone say diluted.
I just watched a lot of documentaries for you.
All the good stuff is on Let's Go Back To, which is available now on the Go Loud player. Thanks, folks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this lot now for the next few weeks.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, and we've got a brilliant guest on again on our new podcast, which you should all listen to and subscribe to.
Yeah, we should do.
I haven't watched anything else this week. I've got no recommendations for you.
We'll get you on it in a couple of weeks to appease you. I know that it's like 20 years since Pine Barrens or something, so we might do that.
I'm refusing to go on. I won't go on. I will not deign. I will not lower myself to go on your silly little show.
It's okay. We'll live it out.
9:33 this morning. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. The beef is real. It's OTB versus Go Loud when it comes to listening to Let's Go Back To. Let's have a look at what's on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold, Mick O'Connell at 80. That's 1 o'clock. The History of Sport with Paul Rouse at 3. Our retro panel is Keeping a Level Head in Football with Stewie Byrne, Dan McDonald and Dion Fanning. OTB Gold is Wexford 56 with Art Foley and Ned Wheeler. And live tonight, OTB, John Giles, the football show, and much more as well. A final reminder, our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League Final preview show is live with Pepsi Max this evening. You've got to be online at 5:15. Sean Wright-Phillips, Teddy Sheringham and Denise O'Sullivan are joining Nathan in what's going to be a brilliant night building up to the Champions League final. The only way to see the show is to be registered for the show on the night. The full show. Get your tickets at otbsports.com/events. Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar. The hashtag is for the love of it. We're going to hear from Alan Quinlan tomorrow's show. There's a build up to the Champions League final and some GAA as well ahead of the weekend. But right now, another taster of episode 3 of the Football Pod. We'll get you the fallout from Dublin Kerry, and the lads got nostalgic about the great Kieran MacDonald.
You've got a deep-seated love for Football Italia and those great days in Channel 4 in the 90s.
Who doesn't?
Joe wants to know, who is the best playmaker that you've ever played with in Gaelic football?
Oh, great question. For me, it would be obviously for Mayo. You'd have Kevin McLaughlin, you'd have Kieran MacDonald, you'd have all these guys in our
McDonald's, yeah.
Our attacking half back line was huge for, I suppose, driving through and you looping and kicking a score and stuff like that. But MacDonald was a genius in all terms of playmaking, and he probably fitted into that number 10 Italian soccer Totti kind of role, you know? But like
Andy, he would not have looked out of place playing with Lazio or Roma.
But
he would have been stunning.
I'll tell you another one, Paddy. Right, so it would like another guy I was in college with. Right, hey, Carl Lacey, lads. What a player! Yeah. Another guy, the tan, the white boots, good-looking boy, and he was just a sensational player. Like he was just. Like kicking, like I often think about that Donegal team, and McGuinness they're always on about McGuinness putting men behind the ball, but it was men behind the ball with a plan, and they always had Lacey out at right half back, not at centre half back, and they used to get the ball to him. And if you look at the 2 goals they scored against us in the All-Ireland final in 2012, directly from Lacey, direct ball to Murphy for the first one and a crossfield ball for the second one. He could see the game, he could slow the game down to his pace, and it was a joy to watch. And then there was another guy called Raymond Mulgrew from Tyrone. You might have mentioned
yeah. And he's a brilliant minor player.
Oh, brilliant. And
they won the minor All-Ireland. He was amazing, yeah.
Yeah, he's from the same club as Mulligan, you know, and 2 headers. But he could see the game in a completely different light. Like he could just see stuff that the normal players just can't see. And it was just, they were great players. So Lacey, Mulgrew, and obviously from a Mayo point of view, MacDonald.
It's funny you say that just on Carl Lacey as well. I remember playing a Sigerson game. So this is like early February, and there was 2 guys on the pitch. Hailstorm, and 2 lads had the most amazing tan. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, where are these boys from? One was Carl Lacey, and Mortimer was on our team for DCU. And the 2 boys looked like they were straight out of Marbella. They spent the winter down in Marbella, and it was like 2 absolute shapers. Great players, but very out of place on a cold February Sigerson day.
There's a famous story that Moran never put in the book about Marbella, I think. You know, no, he went.
I'd say there's a few stories.
He went without telling anyone. I think he did a few exams that week all of a sudden, but there was no exams. I think he was in Marbella, but we'll let Moore tell that one himself. We might bring him on as a guest later on to talk about that one himself or something.
Talk to us about MacDonald, Andy. Like when you were breaking through, he was already a star. He was already, when you came into that panel, what was he like?
Oh, MacDonald, he was. I remember, right, 2004. He won an All-Star in 04, his only All-Star, which is just insane. And he wasn't even in the squad when we went to New York for the first round of the championship. So we're going now. The country is taking off. It's in the boom, and we're flying, you know. And Mahan used to pick
business class over.
Yeah. We came home from New York. Had a great weekend training in New York. Came home, and I'm in the back of John Mahan's car with George Golden, and we're driving to Kildare to play a challenge match. And driving up the road, and he goes, "I have a surprise for you today." And I was like, "What's this book on about?" He goes, "MacDonald is there." And you should have seen it, lads. First day back, he hadn't played for Mayo since the League of 2003. He was in and out a couple of years before, and kids just used to go to him. So the game was over. No one knew who MacDonald was, really, if you were a kid. But after the game, there was hundreds of kids around. Charlie McCreevy arriving in to cut the red ribbon on the helicopter, flying off. The place has gone mad.
Bertie there. Bertie was really around.
I think McCreevy subbed in for that one. But it was just, that was my memory of MacDonald. And then I played it, as we said in the first podcast, played a tiny bit of soccer back in the day. We were playing with Longford, and we used to have this Dublin goalkeeper called Gary Castle. And playing under, and we were doing the false course that was kind of full time at the time. And he was saying, Andy, don't go playing Gaelic, keep with the soccer. Joe, we're having great crack. And I go, listen, I know you hate Gaelic. Watch the game tomorrow. So the game against Nemo for St. Paddy's Day was on the next day. I said, there's going to be a fella playing centre-half forward wearing socks up to his knee. I said, watch him and then tell me the Gaelic is shit. Like. So Casson, I'm in on the Astro the morning after doing a few touches, and Casson comes around the place and he's just shouting at me. Like, he goes, oh, your man is brilliant. He was like, he clapped. He had the white socks up to the knee. He was spinning balls.
A bit of magic.
But he had that aura where he could get people to love the game. And
yes,
I think we're afraid of people like that in the GAA. We're afraid of people who actually get people to come in and admire the game. And as managers and coaches and us moving into that kind of thing, I think we need to encourage guys like that. And it's our job as coaches to get the best out of them fellas. And the lad was a genius. Yeah. Like, the one in Parnell Park, 2005, he was captain. And we did the warm-up. John Morrison and Moran used to bring us all the way around the pitch. Or this was in 2006. And we used to go, and there was about 50 young Dublin lads that followed us the whole way around the pitch. McDonald, he'd go over signing autographs before the game. You know, I've never seen that now, or, you know, then just he was that sort of...
It's characters as well, Andy, isn't it? It's he was obviously an amazing player, like, and you were watching him, and I know from talking to even our lads on our team, when you're growing up, like, you don't really have those type of players anymore. It seems it's gotten so tactical, it's gotten so rigid and things like that. But someone like McDonald was just box office, like. Do you know what I mean? I remember Donaghy had a similar effect when he burst on the scene with Kerry. It was just something new, and it's like, Jesus.
That X factor.
Yeah, we haven't really seen that before and things like so.
You were a minor. You were a Dublin minor in 06, Paddy. Were you there that day when McDonald broke Dublin hearts?
I was on the hill. It was and
you got a good view. You got a good view.
We were thought we were going to win that one as well. Dublin were 7 points up. My brother was playing. Patter. It was actually Patter's last game with Dublin. And remember, like, Dublin hadn't been in an All-Ireland final since 95. So it was 11 years going. It was kind of peak Pillar and that Dublin team. And yeah, they went 7 points up. I think did Alan Brogan get the Palm goal or J.O.? One of them got to start the second half. And you're like, this is the Dubs were singing on the hill. Yeah, all that stuff. And Mayo just reeled him in. What an amazing game. I remember it. But that score at the end, he didn't get an All-Star that year, Andy. No,
he was actually quite poor in that game. The game in general, like Dublin, just were athletically, they were very strong. On top, very strong.
Alan Brogan had a great game. Yeah,
Brogan had an amazing game, and Bonner, even J.O. had a great game that day. You know, so Conal Keeney, I think, on 1-2, 1-3 that day. They were a really good team.
It was a late surge from Mayo. What was your role? What was your role in the mid at the hill, Andy Moran?
My role, I was just great.
Oh, that was before the game. Yeah.
See, I avoid hits. Like I've actually.
I know you do. Yeah.
I avoid attacking.
Same as me.
Night. Yeah, but we this guy called Trevor Howley, and the Dubs decided to do this kick and drill from the 45 into the end line. So it was kick and basically follow the ball, just nice and easy, get yourself going. So Howley decided to stand in the middle and shoulder everyone, like, you know. So he took about 30 shoulders. Like. But like, Howley,
he was knackered after us.
Yeah, Howley came on and leash in the quarterfinal. Couldn't come on the day against Dublin. It's 2 shoulders.
Pillar gave him a few dunces.
He was just hitting everyone. But it was some crack. I'll never forget just running down the hill and the place just went mad. But even the whole atmosphere around that was just brilliant. Coming in on the bus again, the country. No one was going to work on Monday. Like, you know, Mondays were a thing of the past, and it was just
Celtic, peak Celtic time.
It was just.
Yeah. What a time.
The crazy stuff. But listen, Dublin were a better team than us, but we stole it, got to a final. We should have let Dublin get to the final.
There's a lot to come back to from that game, lads, and a lot to come back to from your soccer careers that we'll come to another day maybe. But we might just get into the football. We might get into Kerry, Dublin and Semple last weekend, and I would like to fast forward to the 42nd minute. And Paddy Andrews, you were saying that the Dubs are home and hosed. What happened next? Kerry outscored them by 8 points to 1 in the next 15 minutes.
The third quarter, yeah. It was.
What happened?
It may sound really basic, but Kerry pushed up. They brought a bit more energy and a bit more enthusiasm around the middle. I don't think it's any coincidence, really. Kerry made a couple of changes there. They David Moran and Paul Geaney came off at that stage, and I was kind of looking down. The two boys were shattered. Like Geaney had been trying to play out at wing forward, and that's a hard position to play. He's not naturally a wing forward, you know, and particularly against Dublin, you do a lot of running up and down the pitch. David Moran had been marking James McCarthy, and 5 minutes trying to mark James McCarthy is enough to tire any man out. So you could see the two guys, really senior leaders for Kerry, coming off, but they were knackered. Like, Kerry brought in a couple of younger guys, Adrian Spillane and these guys came in, and you could just see, and particularly from where I was sitting there looking down, at that stage, Kerry were 7 points down, and if the game kept going the way it was going, that would have been a big, big blow to the players, particularly to Peter Keane, and where they were at. And you could nearly say, you could see it in their body language, it was like, we need to do something. We need to push up. They pushed all over Evan Comerford's kickouts. The younger boys came onto the side. All of a sudden, the time that Dublin had on the ball, coming out of the fence, they started turning over Dublin defenders. They took the ball off Sean McMahon. They took the ball off Davy Byrne. They intercepted even Brian Fenton, and you're thinking, it's so rare you see these things happening. But it was that basic. Their Paul Murphy pushed up. Paul Murphy scored 2 points in that quarter from play. He'd been kind of sitting back. He was trying to deal with Niall Scully in the first half and just playing passively. Kerry's whole, from their half-back line to their midfield, they pushed up about 15 yards. And all of a sudden, the Kerry half-back line are essentially playing midfield, and they just condensed that side of the pitch. They started winning steals and Evan Comerford's kickouts, but they were all over Dublin. Sean O'Shea, and you could hear, particularly with no crowd, once Kerry got a turnover, like they turned over Sean McMahon, and the roars, it was just an energy. It was an energy. It was an attitude change. It wasn't really anything tactical at all. It was just more legs around the middle of the pitch. And all of a sudden, the space and nearly too much respect that they had been paying to Dublin, particularly in the first half and the first few minutes of the second half, that's what changed. And to be fair, they looked like they had probably a bit more in the legs than Dublin as well. I think Dublin probably tired a little bit. Kerry are probably a few weeks further down the road in terms of training and stuff like that. But that, it was as simple as that.
I can't let you away with that one. I can't let you away with that one. Kerry are a few weeks further down the road in terms of training.
Honestly, I would say in terms of looking down at the pitch, the athleticism that Kerry showed. Dublin did look the tired, because, lads, the first half, at half-time, Dublin are 9 points up. 6 points up, and in total control of the game, like causing all sorts of hassle for Kerry. And that game was going one way, and you're thinking, Jesus, this is bad for Kerry. So the big switch in the third quarter, like say, they pushed further up the pitch. Paul Murphy starts attacking instead of worrying about Scully. Tyg Morley went on to Con O'Callaghan, and all of a sudden he was all over him, and they were just getting in their face.
Did he stick with Con in the second half, Tyg?
In the second half, their matchups were a lot better. I mean, we might touch on that on where Kerry struggled when we start talking about that. But in terms of the things they did well and what they changed, it was just, you could see it. They started hunting in packs, 3 or 4 guys sprinting across. And this is the thing, when you're talking about tactics and strategies and structures, and you could spend weeks building up to a game and going, you need to be here and you need to be here. The bottom line that underpins all of that is an attitude and a work rate to go and do it. And guys can kind of fall back on and say, oh, well, I was sticking to the structure, or this was... If you could see, Kerry just said, we're throwing the shackles off here. We're getting humiliated. We need to go after Dublin. And that was their attitude. And all of a sudden, they started getting those turnovers. And then all of a sudden, David Clifford was getting the ball in space, 30, 40 yards out from goal, and clipping easy scores, where before that, Fitzsimons was all over in the first half, and Kerry were just struggling. They were second. Their pace was slow. They were standing off Dublin, way too much respect. And if you do that with Dublin, we touched on this in previous pods, they're going to kill you. They will kill you. They have the quality and composure on the ball. And Kerry took them out of that comfort zone in the third quarter. And that's a big lesson for them to learn going into the summer, and a big lesson for Peter Keane. But like I say, the personnel changes as well. It did have a big impact now, having that energy around the middle. And that was probably where Geaney and Moran, to be fair to them, were struggling at that stage.
We have a couple of questions in about David Moran that we might come back to a little later on. Andy, is that what you were seeing? Were you seeing the change in attitude, in mentality? How easy is it to switch that on?
No, Dublin. If you look at the first 3 Dublin goals, right, they actually come indirectly now after a long period of play. They come from a short kick out, right? So similar to what we were saying, but to Roscommon, if you give the best team in the country the ball, you're not going to get it back. And what that happens is, in that transition phase from back to front, it becomes really hard then really hard work. So the likes of the guys who mightn't be big aerobically, like Paul Ganey, David Moran and these guys, okay, they're going to struggle in that transition phase. And all of a sudden, you're going to create that overlap. You're going to get Con with lots of space inside of him. You're going to have an opportunity for a long ball like what Con got for a second goal. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's going to be opportunities to come from that. And if you look at the goals, come for a kick it right, left to right, they move it up the field. It ends up on the left wing. Con's one in over the top for the first one. And then you have Small coming in for the third goal. They're very, very similar, but it's the transition and it's the tiring in between. So that's what I see. You bring on Sheahan, you take off the two boys, you bring on the two lads with energy. Now you're pushing the kick out. Now you fellas aerobically fit enough to do it. It fits, the players fit the plan in my view. And then all of a sudden you have it. Like if you see what Darragh Moynihan did to McDaid, you have two guys there who are really athletically strong.
Yeah.
So you've, like, McDaid doesn't trouble Moynihan going back because Darragh can just stick with him. And then, but like, if you have Paul Ganey, who's then marking, who was he marking?
He was at Davy Byrne actually came out to wing back, and Davy Byrne is flying up the pitch.
And he flies up the pitch. Then Ganey struggles with him because he's used to playing inside forward line. But if you put someone like for like in there, and in fairness to Peter Keane, this is what he was trying to do last year against Cork when he played O'Begley at wing forward, and he was looking at the Dublin game really. So, but what I'm saying if I was a Kerry supporter this morning, I'm saying, why not play David Moran? Why not play Ganey against other teams? And then if you're playing Dublin, maybe pull one of them. So like we used to do with Barry Moran, for example, right? Barry Moran was the best player in Connacht, I would say, for 3 out of the 4 years when we first started, 12, 13, 14, 15, them years. He used to get man of the match all the time in Connacht. But if we go up and play Dublin, Barry used to play. He used to come on as a sub, or he used to, do you know what I'm saying? He might play every now and then. Not because he got any worse or better, not because his form dropped. Simply, he didn't suit the team we played against.
Horses for courses. And that's the role of the manager, and kind of understanding that, but also having the mentality and the confidence in yourself, and explaining that to the players and go, look, and sometimes, and we would have done it with Dublin on their gym as well, you're changing guys, and it's not necessarily, you haven't played badly or you haven't done anything wrong, but this is an area we need to really target against this next opposition. That's why we're playing him. And it's hard for players to say, because like, but you haven't done anything wrong.
You used to do it with Eoin O'Gara quite a lot, Paddy.
Yeah.
Geez, you could be warming up for the Dublin game, and then you'd hear over the channel Eoin O'Gara replaces, just say it's you, Paddy Andrews.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the manager, Stephen Ratchford or James Owen or so on, has to create a completely different plan
thing,
for that person. So it's a change. Like, and Eoin O'Gara could have been very poor in the game previous, but Gavin didn't care for it because all of a sudden it unsettles Mayo for 30 minutes. You know? So there has to be a bit of tinkering. And I still think you can mind the two boys within the system, but if you're trying to play that high press on the kick-out game, and then you want them to run 80 yards back following the ball and then 80 yards forward, I think it's probably too much for them.
But and that's why, in terms of, and we said this when we're talking about the National League, Dublin and Kerry are looking, they're not worried about winning the National League. That's not over, because they're looking for a couple of players to put their hand up that they can use in the summer. But also Peter Keane, it was glaringly obvious. That's what he's taken from that game. When we're passive and we're letting Dublin have the ball and we don't have high energy and we're not in their face, like, Dublin blew them away, and that was Dublin in third gear as well. All of a sudden, so Peter Keane's, we can't do that if we come across these guys in the chapter. That will not work. And all of a sudden, we make the change in the third quarter, and we've energy and just hunger, and guys hunting down fellas. That's hard to do. That is very, very hard to do aerobically, athletically. You need to have the guys that are able to do that. But that is what worked, and that's what got Kerry back into the game and nearly won them the game. That's a huge lesson Peter Keane would have learned from Sunday, and that they're going to carry that into the summer without a doubt.
Could there be issues with
on the flip side of that? Sorry, no, just on the flip side of that, Dublin went a bit off their path. We mentioned Desi. We mentioned Desi a couple of weeks ago. Is he going to be missed? In them 10 minutes, he was missed. Okay, he absolutely was. Like, you see Con O'Callaghan, and I think I said this to you, Paddy. You see him turning around, eating the head of somebody. It could have been Davy Byrne. Jeez,
I think it was Davy, man.
3 weeks in a row, Davy Byrne has got a mention on the podcast.
He's not going to talk to me again.
But yeah, but like he kicks the ball away, and Con turns around and he's eating them, because he's thinking, why isn't that ball going to Scully so that Scully can feed?
I have to say that on the flip side, Dublin were sloppy, and after praising them to the hilt the week before against Roscommon, in terms, I mean, I think they 7 wides in the first half. They had 3 balls dropped short. And in the second half, particularly, I'd look at the last play. After Clifford scores the penalty, Dublin still get a play. And I'm thinking, they're going to work a score here. Or at least a shot. They're going to get it. They're going to get it to Khan. Kieran Kilkenny was taken off with 5 minutes to go, which is kind of surprising looking down. He's the type of guy you want in managing that game. But even still, you're like, Dublin going to work a shot. And they were sloppy. I think Brian Howard hand passed it away to Fenton, who might have been fouled, but the ball is fumbled. And it was just a little bit of sloppiness. And to be fair, and Kerry were definitely in the first half, they had 4 or 5 wides themselves, and it was a very uncharacteristic for both sets of players. And then you kind of think, well, maybe it is actually just their second game of the year. So as good as they were the week before, you'll probably get little inconsistencies as players find their feet. But overall with Dublin, like for the 20 minutes or so they played in that second quarter, I mean, that was a warning to Kerry and a warning to other teams that when Dublin are in the mood at that stage, they can kill anyone. But overall, I think they will be disappointed, definitely, with their efficiency and just a little bit of sloppiness on the ball, particularly in those, like I say, turning the ball over, coming out of defence. Sean McMahon, Michael Fitzsimons, Fento kicking the ball away. You don't see that. But that was because of the pressure Kerry were putting on. Like I say, if you give them time and space, forget about it.
So you're saying Kerry were forcing that pressure in the first half? Or in the second half?
No, they
not
weren't.
In the first half.
They weren't.
So the early wides. So the early wides were just bad decisions.
Early wides were actually just like Paddy Small had too short, and you're kind of thinking.
Lehif, Paddy, with the outside the right.
Lehif with the outside of the right. There's no need.
It was a weird game. It was a weird game.
Yeah, but to be honest, Tommy, I don't even think that was pressure. I just think that was, I don't think it was bad decision making. And with a lot of those shots, Kieran missed one, Fento missed one. They're the right decisions. It was just probably poor execution. That's what it was. It was kind of thinking, Jesus, Lehif's one at the outside of his boot. You never. That's a very difficult skill to get, particularly for a big midfielder to try and do. So
you could do it.
I don't know. I'd still be risky enough trying some of them.
Why would you be leaning on the instep when you were in a tighter angle?
Like I always said, it depends where you are on the pitch. If you practice it and you can nail it, go for it. I don't know if Tom Lehif was. I haven't seen him kick many outside of the right. So I'd say he was under pressure when they're looking back. But like I say, for Kieran's ones or Paddy Small's ones, they're probably the right decision, just poor execution. Okay. And both sides were probably a little bit guilty of that. But particularly on the turnovers that Kerry got in the second half, that was just pressure. That was them in Dublin's face. Sean O'Shea was all over fellas, to be fair to him. And it's a template for Kerry. That's the way forward for them to try and be successful.
Is it fair to say it was much closer to Kerry's 15 than Dublin's 15 at the weekend as well? Dublin's real starting 15.
You're probably looking at, obviously, Cluxton, if he comes back, you would have to say will be in there. Dean Rock is still missing, but Cormac Costello, to be fair to him, he actually wasn't great on the frees. He missed 2, it was frees, but he did score 1-3 from play, so he's got to be in the mix. It's the same. We said it.
You reckon it's pretty close, yeah?
I don't think it's. I think there'll definitely be 2 or 3 changes, but the majority of guys were still there. We said it at the start. Dublin are looking for someone to play with Fenton in the middle of the pitch. Lehif is he's got a couple of games. He's solid. But I'd still say that's a position that's up for grabs. Sean McMahon, who we said Dublin are looking for a back. They're looking for someone to go in there. Did really well. The Killian Spillane was taken off at halftime. And Killian Spillane is a really good player. Had a great game against Galway the week before. Sean McMahon was quite impressive. But then you're looking, Dublin brought on Johnny Cooper and Brian Howard with 2 or 3 minutes to go. You have to think if those guys are moving well, they're going to be in that starting team.
How worried would Dublin be seeing John Small helped off the pitch?
It looks bad because he was going full tilt. He's had trouble with hamstrings in the past. He is a key player for Dublin, and we're going to talk about this when we start talking about the difference up north and with defensive systems and things like that. John Small is a man marker for Dublin, and like defensive systems and teams have gone away from this idea of having a guy. If we're playing Kerry, John Small is marking Sean O'Shea, and he is giving him absolute hell. And he was on Sunday from the first whistle. If Dublin played Tyrone, John Small is marking Peter Hart, and he's taking him out of the game. He's a really, really key role in the Dublin team. And it's a hard thing to do. And lots of teams have gone away from this. And when we talk about the Northern defensive systems, and all of a sudden there's goals galore up in the Ulster Division of the League. Donegal are conceding 4 goals. They could have conceded 8 against Monaghan. And the reason that's happening is because as these defensive systems move away from the comfort blanket of having 10 or 12 guys back in their own half, defenders got complacent. They didn't have to mark anyone. Like if you were playing on the full back line, you didn't have to get touch tight. You didn't have to dog a fella because you three your mates standing 10 yards away from you and will pass him on to someone else. And the art of actual man marking and defending the guys, the great, like Anthony Lynch with Cork when he used to man mark the Gooch, or Conor Gormley with Tyrone, or Mick Fitzsimons, to be fair, still doing with Dublin. These guys, where they actually take pleasure in taking a forward out of the game. Lots of defenders got away from that because they were protected by a defensive system. And you've seen Donegal on their side. The fact that they're now being asked to man mark guys one-on-one, like they could have conceded 8 goals against Moran. They're not used to it. And that's the role John Small plays with Dublin. He is going, who is the key link player for the opposition? And he's taking him out of the game. And if he's not there, and to be fair, it looked like a bad one, we don't know, he's going full tilt and it's a bad hamstring by the looks of things, he would be a big loss for Dublin because he's the man marker in that kind of half back line for them.
What's it like having a bird's eye view of John Small's marking, Andy, when you're in the full forward line and he's in the half back line?
Oh yeah, as an opposition player, as an opposition team, we'd have always identified Small as a key player for Dublin. I think he won his first All-Star or something last year.
Last year was only his first one. Like even Andy, the reason being is because he doesn't do the flashy stuff.
Yeah,
like you know, Paddy Durkin is brilliant from the half back line. He goes up and kicks 3 or 4 points from play, and he got 3 at the weekend. And you're looking going, that's easy to identify that's brilliant play. Yeah. Whereas John Small is not. He's not interested in going with the pitch and kicking scores. He's given a job, and it's like, you're a defender. Defend.
I love when he comes up. I love when he comes up, Paddy, and he might kick a bad one off the outside of his right or so on. You know, and if it's anyone else, the Dublin boys, all the boys are looking at him. If John Small does it, no one says a word to him. No one opens their mouth to him. He just runs back. But no, he's an incredible player. Someone I always thought it about, to be honest with you, it was one of those guys you came in first and you thought, is he the weak link? And all of a sudden, over the course of the years, like, you're just thinking, oh, right, okay, we see what this boy is doing. And you know, Philly gave Dublin something different. Philly McMahon, he had that bit of dirt to him, if you want to call it, like what Lee does for us.
That's what defenders need. Like.
And that's what, and like all defenses need that. Every kind of defensive side needs that, and Small just does it. So can Philly still do that? I doubt it, if I'm being honest. But I'll tell you, Small can do it, and he can do it in spades. And I think he's a huge loss to Dublin.
Have they someone to replace him? Have they someone to replace him? We'll move on quickly.
It's very difficult to try and get someone to replace him because of the experience he has, and like he's been there for 3 or 4 years and he's in top form. Dublin will always have depth, but whether they can do, if they're playing a Tyrone or if they're playing, say they were playing Donegal, Small could easily go on Michael Murphy and just, that's your job. Just deal with him. But on it, aside from John Small, and we might get onto it, that defensive style of play and the defensive systems and how teams are moving away from that, lots and lots of defenders are now being found out.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.